music to the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Paul and Kelly get caught in the fray. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor pulls the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity when they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Steve Fun Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts flow.
Hello and welcome to the Punch Show. And today I've got a few things to cover. And the first thing I want to, well, mostly I'm going to spend some time finishing up our immigration talk from yesterday. And some people had brought up a study that I looked at, and we'll talk about that. That, you know, they said that's claims that immigrants get paid money, and I looked into that study. I thought I knew about it, and what I thought I recalled was accurate, but I've got some more stuff on that. I also want to I also have a little dashboard set up for the Nick Shirley investigation. Some people were like, have been all apoplectic because I said that's been debunked, and the Nick Shirley video is entirely debunked. It's a joke. And it's kind of actually not a joke. It's more like an assault on Tim Walz in the state of Minnesota. And it's a bad faith thing. But we'll talk about that too. But in the first thing I just want to talk about a little bit is this whole Jack Smith hearing. And sometimes, and this goes both ways, some of these hearings, I think they should just call them yellings, because the congressmen that do them do anything but hear. They have their little, questions, which are usually statements with question marks at the end of them. They're not actually trying to learn anything. They're not trying to find out anything. They're not trying to understand anything. They're just trying to get talking time on their local news so that they can raise funds and send out emails to the suckers that are going to send them money because, whatever. But there's, especially with the Republicans, first of all, like with, I don't know about you, but every time Jim Jordan talks, my slap muscles start twitching. He's just such, he's like taint sweat or something. He's just, I don't know how much more disgusting you can get than Jim Jordan. But with Sojourner says George Carlin was absolutely 1,000% correct when he did his analogies about both political parties in this country and explained why he didn't vote. My favorite George Carlin quote, or at least one of my favorite George Carlin quotes, is, think about how dumb the average person is, and then think that, then realize half the people are stupider than that. Which is true. Oh my goodness. And anyway, I want to, so like with regards to this particular yelling that they're having, there's a number of just outright silly things that the Republicans are asking. Good quote. The thing that I want to, like some of the things I want to highlight are, one, I don't remember when Shitty said what, so, but one guy asked why Jack Smith wasn't investigating any Democrats if the January 6th investigation wasn't partisan. Which is like, asking the, the bank hostages, asking the investigator why he didn't investigate any of the hostages when he investigated the bank robbery. Like, there's a reason that they weren't investigating the Democrats, because the Democrats were not actually participating in it. They were the victim of it. They were the intended victim. They were the ones from whom the election was being stolen. So somebody says silly. That's putting it nicely. Yeah, it's a PG show. I've got to keep my language clean. I've got words that I can use sometimes. I could say, for instance, that it's fornicated. That passes the monetizing test. But if I say that it's fornicated up, you know what I mean. But yeah, asking why Democrats weren't being investigated for the January 6th is kind of dumb. All right. Another thing that they keep doing, I've heard this a lot, is that these records were subpoenaed, right? These phone records of these senators and congressmen. And they act like, first, nobody should be allowed to investigate them. It's like, why should we be investigated just because we participated in the crime? And they're using this clause from the Constitution that says they can't be protected for anything to do with I can't remember the clause, but it has to do with, like, for administrative purposes. It's like, what is that clause called? The speech or debate clause, which grants immunity from questioning or lawsuits for their legislative actions. So there was no legislative action here. And as Ted Lieu, pointed out, since there is no legislative purpose, this clause does not apply, number one. Number two, there wasn't like a criminal investigation opened up on these people. There was an endeavor to find out what happened. And part of that was like, why are some of these people in communication with the president of the United States while this is going on, and then seemingly being complicit by voting against the legally and lawfully ratified states under this pretext that the election was stolen. And so you notice they're making it about these tangential things that aren't even real. But one thing I have not heard any of them actually question is the veracity of the actual investigation and the results of the actual investigation. I've heard questions about the January 6th committee, which the last time I checked, Jack Smith was not on the January 6th committee. I don't know why they keep asking him about that, as though he's some, like, that anything is wrong with what the January 6th committee came up with, and B, he doesn't have anything to do with it. So why are you asking him about the January 6th committee? Another thing they've been asking him about is things that happen in investigations that happened before he got appointed, which I don't know why you're making him responsible for things that happened before he was appointed, even though there's nothing wrong with those things. What they're trying to do is just poison the well on the investigation as a whole. And they're trying to find little things to taint the election. Another thing, they're like, they want to make it, they're just fixated on Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony, as though that was like the thing that, like, that, her testimony in the January, in the hearings from the January 6th committee, like, that was the thing that really was the deal breaker. That was like 10, and that was barely even anything to do with it. And again, it was the January 6th committee. So anyway, just notice how they aren't asking about Donald Trump and what Donald Trump actually did wrong. Or, there are some that are like saying, well, you say he really didn't believe it. And Jack Smith is saying, yes, I say he really didn't believe it. So that's in general what I would like to point out with this whole line of questioning, is that none of it actually has to do with whether or not Donald Trump did anything wrong, because they don't want that answered. They want to avoid what Donald Trump's actual culpability is. Their reaction since the first couple of months, at first, some of them were, actually critical of Donald Trump, but ever since Donald Trump started creeping back into the political picture, and ever since he started being able to influence right-wing influencers again, they've kowtowed, and they've just yielded to him, given him whatever he wants, and they refuse to accept that he did anything wrong. What are we talking about? We're talking about the Jack Smith hearing that's going on. Yeah, the Democrats, I don't know why you find that funny. The Democrats were the victims. They were the intended victims of the overthrowing of the attempt to overthrow the government. I'm pretty sure that Joe Biden was a Democrat. I don't get why you think that's funny. Unless, but trying to get into the MAGA mind about this is impossible. What if you didn't participate? Then you shouldn't be investigated. Well, they weren't being investigated. And what did again, this whole thing is not just about January 6th. This whole thing is about the attempt to overthrow the government. So it includes everything from the counterfeit, the certificates, the counterfeit certificates, the fake electors, the pressure to get Mike Pence to unconstitutionally deny the results of the election, the participants from the senators and congressmen that were illegally saying that their states weren't authorized. There was a whole thing to this. It wasn't just what happened on January 6th. And yes, the people that went along with that whole charade, they it was fair to look at, well, how much communication was there? Why was Mike McCarthy having phone conversations with Donald Trump during the actual riot? Well, because right now there's a hearing going on with Jack Smith. I mean, ask the Republicans. They're the ones trying to investigate the investigation. They have nothing else to talk about. Please God, no ice Renee Good again. Now I'm not bringing up Renee Good at all. The only one who tried to steal 2020 was Trump. Donald Trump definitely tried to steal it. And that's just, and that's why you will never see a MAGA actually engage on what actually happened. You'll never hear them talk about the fake electorates. You'll never hear them talk about, they'll talk about, oh, he said peacefully, but they won't talk about while he sat there in the living room watching the riot on live TV and rewinding it to see his favorite parts again without calling the National Guard. They'll repeat the lie that Nancy Pelosi is somehow in charge of the National Guard, which is just a brazenly, legally wrong argument, unconstitutional argument, and completely bogus argument. But they adhere to these bogus talking points, and they will never engage in actual reality on it. You will never hear a MAGA actually admit that they tried to change the outcome of the election and that January 6th was an aspect of that. Demic commies stole our damn tax money. I don't even know what that means. No one attempted to overthrow the government. They would have needed a lot more sticks. Well, but they did attempt it. Let's not confuse the idea that they did something stupid with them not doing it. If somebody goes and tries to rob a bank with a cap gun, it's stupid, but that doesn't mean that they didn't try to rob the bank. They tried to overthrow the government, and Donald Trump was the lead insurrectionist. No, it was an attempt to see. This is why I'm trying to, Bob, if you will actually settle down and think, I am not just talking about January 6th. And Jack Smith's investigation was not just into January 6th. It was into the whole thing. Why are you not talking? Were the fake electorates an attempt to change the result of the election? Was the attempt to get Mike Pence to deny the results of the election, was that an attempt to overthrow the election? Were the fake electors an attempt to overthrow the election? You have to look at the whole thing. You can't just look at the people on January 6th. What was Donald Trump doing on January 6th? Why was Donald Trump sitting there rewinding his favorite parts of the riot instead of calling the National Guard if it wasn't exactly what he wanted to see? I don't understand how the American people can torture my daughter as they have me. I don't know what that means. The only entry into the... Oh, by the way, I'm hoping the comments will be a little bit cleaner today. I changed some of the moderation settings on YouTube because yesterday there were a lot of people that were just getting annoyed with it. There was this guy that was coming on and he just kept repeating the same thing over and over again. So I changed the moderation settings just a bit to avoid like spam and stuff. And I also, since nobody wanted to, everybody wants to use the R word, I just blocked comments that use the R word. So if you can say the same thing, whatever you want, you just say it without using the R word. Did you hear about the gay? Democrats need to be consistent. Under Obama from ACLU, 50 people died under ICE, deported 3 months. Okay, 50 people died under ICE over 8 years. And that is, nobody's saying that being under ICE protection should make you immortal. And I don't know. Anyway, we're not talking about that right now. She's on video live saying she should have. No, she's not. Trump said you need to fight like hell or you don't have a country anymore. These words were poor choice and definitely contributed to the actions. He used the word fight 20 times in that speech, and he used the word peacefully one time. What do you think he meant? This is like just the mafia guy that says, go take care of him. It's just plausible deniability. He put that in there just to cover his butt. He knew exactly what he was doing. And he knew exactly what he was doing because he didn't do anything about it while it was happening. So exactly right. Like when he said things like fight like hell over and over again, he knew what he was saying. And they knew what he was saying. And we know they knew what he was saying because that's what they said when they were in court, being convicted of the crimes that they committed because he told them to commit them. Hey there, Mac Truck. Welcome back. I admittedly don't have enough information about the election situation. I'm merely saying the drunk morons who rioted doesn't equate to that by itself. Okay, first, some of them, and so I encourage you to look into it more. But some of them were actually convicted of not insurrection, but something right close to it. One of them wasn't even there, and now he's been pardoned, or of course. But there were people that actually engineered the riot and were there to engineer the riot. They were not there for the speech. Some of them didn't even go to the speech. Dems never get to say insurrection again unless they want to. Why? Are you like this is actually what I find funny is people think that protesting ICE is an insurrection, but actually trying to overthrow the country isn't. Nancy didn't block the guard, and she can't block the guard. The only person that has authority over the National Guard is the President of the United States. The Speaker of the House has no authority whatsoever over the DC Guard. So she can't. It's just constitutionally impossible for her to block the guard. That is a lie Donald Trump has said. Donald Trump is lying. And I know this because the Constitution says that. And he talks about 10,000 guard. The DC Guard is only 2,000 people. So no, it's not Trump's fault that Nancy Pelosi blocked the guard. It's Trump's fault that Donald Trump blocked the guard. Yeah, we'll talk about immigration stuff later, and we've talked about some of it already. I covered the Obama stuff yesterday, and so I don't want to rehash that. I'm trying to not get, and like you can go and you can look at yesterday's show and see that. I'm trying to, for the sake of all the listeners, instead of getting distracted by every single comment, I'm trying to, be able to move forward and things. So if you want to know what I think about that, look at yesterday's show. I think you should have maybe used the word peaceful more than fight, if I'm being honest, or at least more than once. I mean, and he should have literally just called the National Guard instead of rewinding to see his favorite parts. That, to me, he didn't just watch it. He rewound it. He was like, he had it on TiVo or whatever, and he was sitting there rewinding the DVR to watch his favorite parts over. Maybe then we can call it Iceland. I don't know if you see what I did there, but that was pretty damn funny. Hey, brother, put your faith in Jesus. It's the only way to salvation. Well, I don't know what this has to do with salvation. The Fedsurrection was under... Oh, yeah, because the people that he sent there were already starting it. And the feds... He was in charge of the federal government. Like, why do you guys never, process this information? It's just... And why would, it's just so dumb. It's so dumb. Why would the feds under Donald Trump want to attempt a coup? Why? I mean, it doesn't even make sense. If they were for Biden, wouldn't they want to stop a coup? Yes, DC police. Well, Speaker of the House isn't in charge of the DC police. And we're not talking about the DC police. We're talking about the DC Guard. The National Guard and the DC police are not the same thing. The Capitol Police are also not the same as the DC police. They're three different things. And Nancy Pelosi and the Speaker of the House are not in charge of any of those things. The Capitol Guard is governed by a board. And on that board, there is the Speaker of the House. There is also the Senate Majority Leader. And there's also other people. She doesn't have the unilateral decision over anything. And that's the Capitol Police. That's all she has any say in. And there's no evidence that she denied anything at all. She wanted more protection. A simple Google would tell you that the DC police is in charge of the Speaker of the House. I don't think a simple Google would tell you that. I don't even think that a simple Google would tell you that the Speaker of the House is in charge of the DC police. Oh, so now we're on to the Capitol Police. No, the Speaker of the House is not in charge of the Capitol Police. I'm not ignoring the fact. I'm denying your statement is true. And again, we're also, just to clarify, the question was whether or not she denied the National Guard, not the Capitol Police. Now, as far as whether or not whoops. So as I was saying, I asked Claude here if there was in charge of the Capitol Police. No, not directly. The Capitol Police are overseen by the Capitol Police Board, which consists of 3 officials: House Sergeant of Arms, Senate Sergeant at Arms, Architect of the Capitol. The Speaker's indirect authority is the Speaker of the House appoints and can remove the Sergeant at Arms, who then okay, so I was a little bit inaccurate, so I'm glad I looked it up. The Speaker of the House appoints and can remove the Sergeant at Arms, who then serves on the Capitol Police Board. So the Speaker has indirect influence through their appointee, but doesn't directly command the Capitol Police. This tripart structure means no single person controls the Capitol Police. Both chambers have representation because, the Senate. So I'm sorry, she appoints the House Sergeant at Arms. The Senate Sergeant at Arms also has a say. Both chambers have representation. Major decisions require coordination among the 3 board members. This becomes particularly significant during January 6th, when questions rose about who had authority to request National Guard assistance, why there were delays in response in the chain of command during the crisis. The Capitol Police Board, Police Board appoints the chief of the U.S. Capitol Police, who handles day-to-day operations. And did Nancy Pelosi have any authority to order the National Guard? So we're just going to address this once and for all. I'm not going to come back to this again. So no, none whatsoever. The Speaker of the House has 0 authority to deploy National Guard. Who controls the DC National Guard? The President is the sole authority, acting through Secretary of Defense or Secretary of the Army as delegated. This is unique to DC. Unlike state National Guards, the DC National Guard has no government, so it reports directly to the President. Any congressional leader can do is request assistance from those who do have authority. Coordinate with Capitol Police about their security needs, communicate concerns to the executive branch. All right, so we have done that. We have dealt with that. We have talked about that. We're done with that. Please just accept the answer. Accept reality for an answer. She can when they are deployed. No, she can't. This is just not true. I'm not going to go into it. The Speaker of the House is not anywhere in the chain of command of any military organization. We'll talk about that in a bit. You're tying in this. I don't know why you're talking about border laws. We discussed yesterday, again, this is like I'm trying to avoid restating the same things over and over and over again. So yesterday we talked about the oh, whoops, I forgot to plug in and my battery's almost dead. Hang on 1 second. Sorry about this. Okay, so yesterday we talked about the difference between illegal immigrants, asylum seekers, and refugees. Okay, illegal immigrants are people that are here illegally. January 6th was wrong, but you don't need to, I'm not lying about her. The Speaker of the House is not in charge of the DC police. And it's not a fact that can't be changed because it's not a fact. It's just not true. Cut in line. And what? There is no line. Speaker of the House. Okay, you're just going to keep saying that over and over again. Objections were on the paper signed by. I don't understand how American people can torture. I'm not being proven wrong, though. You guys just keep saying the same wrong things over and over. Again, the Speaker of the House does not have authority over the DC police. She only has the authority to appoint the House Sergeant of Arms, who is 1/3 of the decision-making board. She has no authority over the DC police, and she has no authority over, the National Guard. There is not video of her admitting responsibility because she didn't have any responsibility. There is not a very long line. Anyway, there is no line because there is no line to get in. There is no means by which most people around the world, especially the people that are coming over illegally, there is no line for them to get in. You have to basically have a college degree or a relative to come over to the United States legally. And if you don't have a college degree or a relative here, there is no line to get in. You're welcome. You can tell this guy never went through the process. Yeah, and like there's, I mean, it's just, this is like I spent a 4-hour show yesterday talking about like this stuff. So I don't want to get just sucked into that quicksand again. Yep. We'll get into that. We'll get into, like the wage depression and stuff like that too. When I get to the immigrants thing. The left is done. Long live. Okay, yeah. If the January 6th defendants were criminals, then why did? Because you've got a guy that's trying to prosecute everybody for all kinds of fake stuff and had promised to be vindictive and prosecute people that didn't do anything illegal. There are no crimes that they've even been alleged to have done. And the January 6th defendants were criminals because they were convicted of crimes. Well, actually, they were convicted of crimes because they were criminals. Matthew, you weren't correct. She is not in charge of the Capitol Police. I mean, I don't know how you got from what I said to you were right. You said she's in charge of the Capitol Police. She is not in charge of the Capitol Police. The committee is in charge of the Capitol Police. She appoints 1/3 of that number. Many of the January 6 people were allowed in by. That's exaggerated, and the whole thing is they were allowed in after they had already broken in, and there was just a there was a decision made that at this point there is no point in trying to keep them out because they were just already in and running all over the place, and so it was just more peaceful than getting the crap beaten out of them. Over 140 police officers were injured on January 6th. There is a reason why Donald Trump isn't going after hotel workers and farmers. They want to keep their low-wage workers. I don't know if that's they've gone on some farms and stuff. I don't know about hotels. What's your opinion on the anti-ICE police protesting inside a church, interrupting services? They'll be prosecuted. Okay, so I talked about this the other day. I don't think that they should be processed under the KKK law because they weren't protesting the religious aspects of things. They were protesting the ICE. But I think that the people that are in that church have a right to worship. And so what is it called? The PACE law or something? I can't remember the name of the law, but I think they broke that law and they should be prosecuted for that. The same as anybody that's trying to, protest in an abortion clinic would. Like, I don't like the idea of people going into a church and protesting. And I find that morally wrong as well as legally wrong. And I think like the Westboro Baptist Church, you should have the same opinion that what they did was wrong, whether it was legal because they were doing it from a public parking space or public sidewalk. But that's a real family that's actually burying their children who died for their country. And I think they should be allowed to do that in peace and without protest. And I think people should be able to worship however they worship in peace without being protested. So I hope that answers your question. By the time they went to trial, they just took plea. No, some of them went to trial and got convicted, and some of them took plea deals because they were guilty. I mean, there were actually people that actually beat police officers with flagpoles and stuff. Like, that actually happened. You can't just deny the violence happened. She doesn't have full control over the sergeant at arms. She appoints the sergeant of arms. And the sergeant of arms is only 1/3 of it. And she didn't do anything to keep the DC police there because the DC police were the only ones that were there. Come on, dude. You went from the National Guard, like she has authority over the National Guard, to she has authority over the DC police, to she has authority over the Capitol Police, to she has authority over the sergeant at arms, the House Sergeant at Arms. Come on. Just admit you're wrong and move along. What, they both resigned the next day, sir. What does that say about their confidence in their decisions? Well, maybe it just has, I don't know what it has to say about it. What do you think it has to say about it? Democrat states are suing. I don't know what this has to, we're not. Genuinely, Kelly, words don't work. I think a year in where to the point where we should spend our time doing more productive things. Well, I'm not ready to give up yet. I agree January 6th was bad, but I'm going to I'm not making things up. I mean, I'm just stating the fact. Nancy Pelosi did not have the authority to call in the National Guard and end it. And I don't even know what any of that has to do with the Jack Smith hearing either. No. The initial group that broke in still broke in. It doesn't change that other people broke in. It doesn't change that 140 police officers were beaten and injured. That doesn't fit your narrative. So you just want to zip 2 hours into it when they just said screw it and just let them walk around. No, what doesn't fit your narrative is what you are ignoring. Dems act like January. In some ways, I think January 6th was worse than 9/11. At least you didn't have half the country trying to pretend like 9/11 wasn't an attack on the country. At least 9/11 wasn't orchestrated by the President of the United States. At least 9/11 wasn't an outright attack on our democracy. At least 9/11 wasn't a blatant attempt to overthrow the government. So yes, I think that January 6th was not only as bad as 9/11, I think it was worse than 9/11. And I have very good reasons for believing that. You can protest outside, but as soon as you go in and they ask you to leave and you don't, you are trespassing. And as soon as you start beating police officers, you're committing assault. Yeah, that's a lot of just that's not even engaged in reality enough to comment on. A church is a weird place to protest ICE, not to mention it's not right. And I like I said, I think that was wrong. The reason though that they were going to that place to protest ICE is that the pastor was also a leader in ICE. And so they went there to protest him specifically, but he wasn't even there. And I think they were wrong. But they weren't protesting Christianity or something. They weren't protesting the church. They were protesting the leader of the church. You can protest. Yeah. Why can't we persecute the prosecutor? Because he didn't do anything illegal. Illicit immigrants are not all criminals or killers or drug dealers. By the way, like Trump claims, Trump can say what he wants because criminal elites, Nazis protect him. They did not fake any. They did. Okay. They did not find fake votes with no signatures in Georgia. What they found, what happened is when you bundle the ballots, the poll worker is supposed to sign a piece of tape that has them in there. And there were some bundles that didn't have that signature. That does not mean those ballots weren't legal. I mean, you're completely, I don't know if you're misunderstanding or you're misstating what happened. But that is not what happened. Oh, now it's the Google would tell you that the Speaker of the House has strong authority over the Sergeant at Arms. There were the DC, the Capitol Police were there. Matt, why did they shoot Ashley Babbitt? Couldn't let that. Probably not. You've got to understand. Like there was an actual investigation into this. And one, Ashley Babbitt was not just like wandering around on the sidewalk. She wasn't just trying to drive home from dropping her kids off at school. Ashley Babbitt broke through a barricaded window, and there was a bunch of people that were screaming, "Hang Mike Pence." And there were people being beaten. There was violence all over the place. Like, let's not just color away all that. And you've got the president, the vice president of the United States, whom they are saying they are trying to kill. And you've got this woman They break open a door, or they break open the window of that door, and she's crawling through it. What are they supposed to do? Wait until she's all the way through? They have like half a dozen people, get 3 of them to detain her while the next person crawls through? I mean, at a certain point, that is on Ashley Babbitt. And people are like, well, she was unarmed and, she had a pocket knife on her or something. But like, whether she was armed or not is kind of irrelevant at that point. She didn't need a weapon. She was the weapon, and she wasn't the only person. She was one of thousands. And so you stop that at the beginning. Well, you seem like a good guy. Thank you. Doesn't really matter. I mean, I don't know what that means. Like, why? I think, was her daughter doing a documentary or something? Why do you keep moving the goalposts with the National Guard when every time I say Capitol? Because you started off with the National Guard, and because the Capitol Police were there, and because you keep moving the goalposts yourself. You started off saying the National Guard, then you said the DC Police, then you said the Capitol Police, then you said the Sergeant of Arms, the House Sergeant at Arms. And all of this, the Capitol Police were there. The Capitol Police were the ones that were actually defending them. There's no question about whether the Capitol Police were there or not. The question is, why weren't the National Guard there? And Donald Trump says the National Guard weren't there because of Nancy Pelosi. I don't understand why you're talking about the Nancy Pelosi and the Capitol Police and the Sergeant at Arms. A lot of people don't know this, but prior to the destruction of the Roman Empire, they had to deal with constant threats of invasion by settlement. This is you were a liberal as soon as I saw you, before I even heard you were talking about. Okay. Nancy, I don't know, why would Nancy Pelosi want this to happen? What was her motive? Jack Smith had to admit he was illegally. He didn't actually. I watched him. He didn't admit he was illegally sworn in. He said that was what Judge Cannon said. He said he disagreed with her ruling. Uh, 256 agents. Or did you read what was going on there? Again, who is in charge of the FBI? Number one. Number two, the FBI agents that were there went there in response to the riot. They weren't provoking it. Did you read the whole thing? Or are you just repeating what Donald Trump posts on Truth Social? There actually were weapons there, and there were guns there. There's even videotape of people with guns in the trees at the ellipses, and him saying, I don't give a bleep about them. They're not here for me. Let them in. Yeah. And like I said, with the church deal, I think they broke the law. No, he didn't. Saying they were actually trying to take over. No, but we're not saying that, Matt. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they were trying to take over because they had fake electors, that they had these fake certificates, that you had all these congressmen that were supposed to delay the vote and cause all this confusion. I'm saying that because there was an entire plan mapped out, and only one aspect of it was a bunch of organized riot that was pre-planned, and people were convicted of planning it. Because they weren't, okay. Because they weren't let in initially. Can we engage in reality here? Those people that were let in hours afterwards. The people that, you know, like where that little video where the guards are holding holding the police are holding the doors open for people. Yeah, that happened after the videos of the cops getting the crap beaten out of them. And didn't destroy anything. They did, like, how much damage was done on the Capitol? They were, like, literally wiping their own crap on the walls. I don't remember the dollar amount. I'm looking it up. But there was actually, you'd say there was no damage done. There was broken windows and doors. There was vandalism, contamination requiring extensive cleaning. There was infrastructure damage, security systems damage, surveillance equipment broken. So it's about $1.5 million worth of damage. So I don't know how you go from didn't destroy anything after it's like $1.5 million in damage. They weren't let in. They broke in, and then they were allowed to walk around after they beat the crap out of 140 cops. I mean, like, are you willing to accept the reality that 140 cops were injured? I was keeping in mind, but you lost me at January 6th is worse than 9/11. Well, I mean, in terms of economic damage and fatalities and stuff, yes, 9/11 was worse. But there are some aspects of it where January 6th was worse. Like, I'm just talking about my personal opinion. I lost a lot of faith in the institution of our democracy that day. And, you know, there was an actual attempt by my own senator, by the way, to overthrow the United States government. And then he got reelected. We've already been through this. Pelosi can't refuse the National Guard. It's impossible. January 6th was not a mostly peaceful protest. Not when I mean, it depends on what you're trying to define. If you're talking about the speech, where I think like a bunch of people left after the speech, but the ones that marched on the Capitol and broke in and beat 140 officers and put some in the hospital and like blinded one and like caused one to have a heart attack and then it came back to life. Yeah, that was not peaceful. How about all this? There weren't any CIA informants in the crowd. Like, just your conspiracy theories don't even make sense on this, that this was somehow planted. Like, on the one hand, you've got people saying, oh, it was peaceful. There was nothing wrong with it. Everybody was just, you know, twiddling their thumbs and eating oatmeal, and they were all fine and dandy, and nobody did anything wrong. And then on the other hand, you're saying, well, it was the CIA that did it. And then it was the FBI that did it. And then it was the informants who did it. And there was all this kind of Nancy Pelosi's the one that shut down the, well, if there wasn't anything wrong with it, why are you trying to say that all the people did these things wrong? And why is it that the Democrats, why would the Democrats or the people that didn't want Trump actually want January 6th to happen? None of it makes sense. Hey, Kitty, welcome. 9/11 was a horrible incident, but January 6th was our own people being domestic terrorists. And that's like, it's like, I don't know, it's like saying, which is worse, cancer or AIDS, you know? I mean, it's like they both have their own little terrible things. Like January 6th was a bigger stain on our country because we did it to ourselves. Trump got ripped off. They were right. No, we've already been through this, Lord. These improper ballots. All right, let's address a few things about the 300. The ballots were not improper. The ballots were fine. All that was wrong with it is the tape they put around it wasn't signed by a poll worker that after they were counted. And those ballots were later recounted. So they were counted a second time. So there were, like, the ballots themselves were actually legally cast. It's just a poll worker forgot to sign it. And there's like a constitutional history here. You can't take away somebody's vote because a poll worker made a mistake. And so you're saying because this poll worker forgot to sign a piece of tape, 300,000 people deserve to have their votes thrown out. And that's not constitutional. That's not logical. That's not reasonable. That's not ethical. The fact they were pardoned makes it even worse. Yeah, the January. I mean, by Republicans' logic or Trump supporter logic, if the January 6th defendants didn't do anything wrong, why did they need to be pardoned? We're not talking about Renee Good against Snipey. The officer from where he was standing, I mean, again, this is all investigated and stuff. They invest, like, there was stuff going on, and it's like when you're talking about trying to detain somebody or, no, it wasn't a false flag perpetrated by the FBI. And why would the FBI perpetrate this false flag? Please explain to me your logic. An Obama-controlled Biden auto. What? Is this a sarcastic? This must be a facetious comment. There were 140 of them there, not a handful. I know this because they were over at least 140 were injured. So there were at least 140 there. I don't believe he was. I think it's a lie. I don't believe there was internal bleeding. I haven't seen any medical records. All I've heard is what's her name say it, and she lies. You were just being dishonest. I just looked at my. Okay, I might have confused you with somebody else because you've got all these other people talking about the National Guard. But regardless, the Capitol Police were there, and Nancy Pelosi does not personally decide who is in the National Police, and neither are how many National Police or how many Capitol Police were there, and neither does the Sergeant at Arms. It's a committee of 3 people, and again, there's absolutely no reason to believe that she didn't want them there. So they could use it to go after Trump. Why do they need to go after Trump and his supporters? They won the election. This is not thinking critically. This is the opposite of thinking critically. Thinking critically is, why do you need to go after Trump if Trump is on his way out? Trump is insane. I mean, he's insane and not very bright. And yeah, see, this is just blather. All right. So anyway, that's enough on this subject. No one is blowing Trump or ICE. Look at this. Yeah, I appreciate that you're honest on this. The guy that they pulled out of his house in his underwear, and I was saying this yesterday, it's not just that he was an American citizen that was let out into the middle of a Minnesota winter in nothing but his underwear. It's that a human being was dragged out into the middle of a Minnesota winter. in nothing but their underwear. And you can say what you want about whether illegal immigrants should be here, but you don't need to you don't need to what's the word? You can say what you want about them not being here, but you can still treat them like human beings. Why do all you liberals look and act goofy? Can you pick? I can pick up. Yeah, right. I can pick you out of the crowd. You're the one with one tooth. ICE is just in Minnesota because they're. Yeah, well, there's not 3,000 of them in Oklahoma breaking into people's homes without warrants and dragging them outside in their underwear, is there? All right, so yeah, let's move on. Move the conversation along here. So let's go on to yesterday. I mentioned that the Nick Shirley thing had been all debunked, and I got a bunch of people saying, like, demanding that it had not been, and just so I put together a little dashboard. If you're on YouTube, in the description there is a link to this dashboard, which also has links in it, I think. Or okay, these are at the bottom. You see there's a bunch of linked articles that verifies everything I'm saying in this dashboard, because that's the way that Nick Shirley's viral video. Here, and just in case anybody wants it, here is the link. If you're like in a different section, that's the link to the dashboard. So if anybody else wants to look at it, you can. So the viral video had 135 million people look at it. Views on Twitter, 3 million views on YouTube. Shirley claimed that posted a 42-minute video claiming to expose over $110 million in fraud at Somali-run daycares in Minnesota. He visited facilities that appeared empty and interviewed bystanders, suggesting widespread fraud. Started as a YouTube. So Nick Shirley, just a little bit about him. He used to be a YouTube prankster. That's how he got his start. Now he calls himself an independent journalism, even though he's never had any training or background in it. He just started calling himself a journalist. He filmed himself at the January 6th Capitol insurrection. He has a history of making videos with anti-immigrant themes. He participated in White House Roundtable with Trump and other right-wing figures in October. And he previously made false claims about Ukraine, Haitian immigrants in Portland being taken over by Antifa. So he's a right-wing pseudo-journalist, independent journalist, nut job who has a history of lying. So claims Shirley exposed $110 million in fraud that authorities didn't know about. The truth, as of December 2025, state officials reported that ongoing investigations found no evidence of fraud at the sites Shirley visited. None of the daycares have formal allegations of fraud against them. This remains true today. None of them actually has a formal allegation against fraud, in spite of the fact that Donald Trump has sicked the entire Department of Justice on the state of Minnesota. The mainstream media ignored this massive fraud. He claims mainstream media ignored this massive fraud scandal. The truth, Minnesota journalists have been investigating and reporting on actual fraud cases for over a decade. The Star Tribune, KARE 11, and NPR News have all published extensive coverage dating back to 2015-16. A week before Shirley's video, the Star Tribune published an explainer on Minnesota's fraud issues. And this is one thing that's really important. You get people that will sit there and they will talk about, so you're saying Minnesota doesn't have any fraud. No, what I am saying is what Nick Fraud called the fraud. What Nick Shirley, Freudian slip there. Nick Shirley calls fraud doesn't exist. There are 3 other major fraud scandals that have all been broken open, all have been prosecuted, and all were prosecuted under Biden. Nobody's saying those things didn't happen, that they weren't massive, that there weren't massive fraud schemes. What I am saying is that the Nick Shirley daycare fraud schemes, those aren't valid. All right, so these ghost daycare centers, he says these ghost daycares are stealing millions in government funds. The truth, Shirley fundamentally confused 2 completely different federal programs. The fraud model from Feeding Our Future, which there was some overlap, child nutrition program administered by the Department of Education, cannot be replicated in the child assistance program administered by the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. The CCA system requires parents to apply with documentation of children's identities and ages, county agencies to verify need based on parent employment, licensed providers to bill only for services actually provided, complete and accurate attendance records, annual inspections by DCYF, investigators for health and safety compliance. The structure of CCAP makes the fake daycare model impossible. This is really important. This means that the things that he alleged were not only not true, they were not possible. He didn't even know what he was talking about when he was trying to conflate the CCAP with the child nutrition program. So the truth, the video represents legitimate investigative journalism. The truth, University of Minnesota media law professor Jane Kirtley said this video lacks basic journalism standards. They have a narrative and they do everything they can to advance that narrative, but they seem to spend little to no time looking for the other side of the story, and that's what good investigative journalism has to do. The video featured no transparent methodology, no clear sourcing hierarchy. Like, did they investigate other, agencies, for instance? What was their methodology? How did they come to these 10 particular clinics? And it turns out because the person that's running against Tim Walz for governor told them to. No clear sourcing hierarchy, no meaningful right or of reply. Conclusion first approach, decided fraud existed, then sought footage to support it. An unidentified whistleblower named only as David with no credentials, and it turns out that the David with no credentials was a Republican operative. Police being called twice on Shirley for harassment. The claim the facilities visited were clearly fraudulent. The truth, while some facilities had violations, like the misspelled sign at Quality Learning Center, having 120 violations over 3 years, and they get investigated. So out of 10 facilities, 121 violations over 3 years is like 40 per year. And this is on a checklist of 400 different things that get checked for each visit, and that's twice a year. So you're talking about a 99% of the things they're actually doing right. There's no violations. This was during the pandemic under a separate program. None have been charged with fraud. Receiving Feeding Our Future funds doesn't prove current CCAP fraud, and state inspectors have visited these centers in the past 6 months. Also, CBS News, the local CBS News, went to all of these places, and all except for the one that we already knew was closed, which wasn't receiving funds at the time. All of those were open. Analysis by disinformation experts identified several propaganda techniques in Shirley's video. Establishing a strong conclusion first forces others onto the defensive. Getting your version out first means everything that follows is interpreted through your lens. Shirley didn't investigate whether facilities were fraudulent. He concluded they were, then looked for footage to support it. credibility laundering using the aesthetic of investigative journalism, dramatic music, B-roll footage, serious tone to deliver partisan content without the substance of actual journalism. In-group versus out-group appeals, framing the alleged fraud as an attack on taxpayers and everyday Americans against Somali immigrants positioned as outsiders who didn't respect the system, which, a lot of them weren't even immigrants and aren't even immigrants, and they're not illegal immigrants. This activates grievance politics and preempts empathy. Contextual explanations become excuses for them rather than facts. Selective evidence, showing empty-looking facilities without context, like they're closed, whether time of day, whether children were on field trips, etc., and ignoring responses from facility operators. Real-world consequences of federal funding frozen. Child care funding to Minnesota was frozen statewide. So even facilities that had nothing whatsoever to do with any of even the fake allegations, those funds don't go to those facilities. Those facilities don't get money. That means those facilities close, which mean that all kinds of families that have nothing to do with anything have to find a different way to find care for their kids, or they lose work. So people all across the state of Minnesota are being punished for these fake videos. Increased enforcement, DHS and FBI surge personnel, and the whole ICE thing is somehow connected to this, at least in pretext. Racial profiling, federal agents began profiling, detaining individuals who appear Somali, including U.S. citizens. Death threats, daycare providers received death threats. Fatal shooting, an ICE agent killed a woman during an immigrations operation that senior DH officials told CNN were in response to this video. Harassment and raids, targeted harassment of Somali communities. So that pretty much covers it. I'm going to come back here and look at some of the comments, which are probably just ignoring everything I just said, but whatever. Denaturalize the legal. Yeah, so that has nothing to do with it. This is just exactly what it says. Is you frame it a certain way, and then all of a sudden, it's all about legal chain immigrants involved with fraud. There was no fraud. They didn't no. It's not the way he framed it that was the problem. It's what it's that he lied. Trump. It's spelled, it's not waltz, it's walls, W-A-L-Z. And the fraud has already been prosecuted. Has nothing to do with the Nick Shirley video. As I said, there are different frauds. There were 3 frauds prior that were already prosecuted and convicted. Blacks, so-called blacks, are Aborigines of America. I have no idea even what that's supposed to mean. Trump, he will say it's debunked. Well, it is debunked. That's the whole point I'm making, is it's debunked. It's debunked by the fact that it's impossible. What he is alleging is impossible to have happened, as I went through. But, people can't listen. I turned the host down to barely audible, untenable. I'm here for chat. Well, so you're not here to actually engage and learn, or, hear that maybe something is not according to what you already presuppose and believe. Dude, you're arguing something that is just empirically false. There are thousands of fraud indictments coming down the pipeline, in addition to the millions that have already been uncovered in fraud. No, there's not. Number one, there are not thousands of frauds coming down the pipeline. That's just nonsense. There are people that have already been in, I think it's 78 people that have been convicted. And none of the things that, again, there is the fraud that has already been prosecuted. And then there are the Nick Shirley allegations. The Nick Shirley allegations have not resulted in any fraud charges. You know something that Shirley doesn't? I know a lot of things that Shirley doesn't. You should go talk to the guy that he did the report with. They offered $100K for anyone to disprove any of them. Well, but they've been disproven. I don't know if they got paid or not, but they've been disproven. As I was just going over, and there's like a whole series. Like if you want to click on the link, all of these links show that they have been disproven. So or maybe the guy is just lying because he's been disproven, Cobb. Okay. I don't think this guy has the entire truth, and there are not fake. You're reading half of truth can't be racial falsifying seems. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean, but I am giving you I'm giving you the truth. Like, you just because you don't want to, again, let me just review this again. All right? Because I think maybe you missed something. Okay. The dose care Shirley fundamentally confused two completely different federal programs. The fraud model from Feeding Our Future, child nutrition program administered by the Department of Education, cannot be, so there was a kind of fraud under the child nutrition program. And he is alleging that the same fraud happened with the child care assistance program. But that same kind of fraud is impossible because there are fundamental things about the distinction between the two that make it impossible. So it's not just that he's wrong, it's what he is alleging is not possible to happen. It's like saying what goes up must stay up. Thanks, Kitty. You want the political? This guy doesn't know the true part of the Somalia country is terrible over there. Yes, I don't know. I don't know what you know. I lived in Minnesota for 7 years, but you probably have never even been there. But you know more about the Somali community up there than I do. Amy Brock admitted Wallace and Ellis knew about the fraud and cover. No, she didn't. She's also the one that led the whole thing. Let me just. I mean, if she. I mean, I think admit, like saying she admitted they knew would be at worst alleged they knew. Like they didn't like beat it out of her and she was trying to cover up for him. I have never heard heard about her saying any. Okay. So all right. So this is what you're talking about. I'll share this. So you're right that she alleged Walz, and by the way, people, notice the spelling, W-A-L-Z, and Attorney General Keith Ellison knew about the fraud. From her jail cell interview, Brock said, I have to believe, so she says, I have to believe that the governor's office and Keith Ellison were aware of this. They've said they were involved in helping the FBI. They said they were made aware. She claimed state officials continued approving and paying claims even after she flagged suspicious companies, and the state was responsible for monitoring but failed to investigate. So this, for those that don't know who she is the ringleader of the whole thing. She's the one who organized it all. She was convicted on all counts in the Feeding Our Future fraud case. She's awaiting sentencing and faces up to 33 years. The spokesperson for Ellison's office dismissed her as a liar, fraudster, and manipulator of the highest order who has never acknowledged or accepted her guilt. Prosecutors called her the mastermind of the scheme and said that she was at the head of the scheme. What she's not alleging is Block is claiming Wilson Ellison knew about the fraud and failed to stop it, not that they participated in it directly. Her allegation is about the negligence in action, not direct involvement. Given that she's a convicted fraudster making claims that could deflect blame from herself, her allegation should be viewed with extreme skepticism. So there's nothing to say that they covered it up or anything. And again, you got to consider the source. And thanks for letting me know about that, because I did not know that she had said anything like that. God likes to pretend he used to be a Democrat. Every so. Yeah, you've already said that. This is for sure the guy that will believe if you piss on his head. You're the guy that voted for Trump 3 times. You're just reading something you want to be true, but it doesn't change the fact that there are literally billions of dollars. I have said repeatedly that there is legitimate fraud costing billions, and that has already been prosecuted. But you do not listen very well, Gob. Maybe stop typing and start listening. I am saying that this particular daycare fraud thing is not real. Not that there is no fraud. Laura, land belongs to whoever. I genuinely don't understand the whole Trump 2028 thing. We have a term limit, folks. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I think it's just a thing. It's like a thing he's doing to troll. It's always Somali fraud. Do you think that other people commit fraud? And again, that's fraud that has already been prosecuted. Why do you have to make it about Somalis? And it's like, do you know what a generalization fallacy is? Yeah. And it can be very, very racist. And so you get upset when I say you're racist. But then you sit there and you say, well, these Somali people did a bad thing, therefore all Somali people are bad. Yeah, but it's been debunked, and I don't think he's given anybody $100,000. In Virginia, Dems are proposing ending oversight committees in order to avoid another Nick Shirley situation. I don't know anything about that. But Nick Shirley thing is bogus. That's, you guys wanted proof. I gave you proof. I gave you links. I gave you a link to the document that I did. So, feel free to look it up. I'm not going to argue about reality with you. Okay. So I need to take a quick break here. I've got to take care of personal situation. I will be back in a couple of minutes. Sorry to do this to you. Let me I'll be back in 5 minutes, if that. So hey, I'm back. Thanks for waiting, if you did. um Sorry, I've got get these yes, because what my parents named me, that's 100% the issue here. Why do people think that's clever? Never understood that one. Um, Sorry, I need to get my Alka-Seltzer here. I get these really terrible reflux issues. So neo-Marxist puppet, 99% FGM underrated. I don't even know what that means. 99% field goals made rate? I don't know. I can never keep up with the chat. Hassan. Okay, yeah, you keep saying that as though it will magically become true at some point. Remember, ignorance betrays us. All right, so now we're ready to move along here. We're not getting anywhere on this, and it's not like I thought we would, but we can try. All right, now I want to go into what I was hoping would be the main thing that we talk about today. We're going to talk more about the undocumented immigrants and the economic impact. And so first, I hope this works. Yesterday, I got a phone message that I want to play. Actually, let me see. I had a guy call yesterday, and I didn't get it in time. I didn't see it in time, so I'm going to play it now. And I hope that it... Okay. I don't. I hope you heard that. Did it? Was that? Didn't I might have actually. I think I forgot to do this. Let's try this again.
Good evening. You say that illegals don't get any welfare, yet I posted factual evidence that they collected welfare from tax dollars in your chat, yet you refuse to acknowledge that.
So I don't know what the evidence that they collect welfare is. Um, so I don't know what evidence he posted, but I know that what the general confusion is there are undocumented immigrants don't collect welfare. There are instances where tax dollars can go to um, one peripherally go to people who are undocumented. One is there's a fund set aside for people that get emergency medical care that don't have insurance. And a portion of that money is illegal immigrants. So an illegal immigrant can go to an emergency room, get treated for something like a life-saving situation or like giving birth or something like that. And then they don't have the money to pay the hospital. So the hospital gets reimbursed for that by the United States government. So it's actually the hospital receiving the money for providing that care, which they are obligated to provide by law. And that's more about uninsured people than it is undocumented people. But some undocumented people are also uninsured and get this care. There's another confusion that happens where there are people that live in households that have undocumented people, and those households can get tax dollars, but those people are American citizens. So it's like if you have a child who is an American citizen, then and this is more if you have a child who's an American citizen but you're undocumented, then the money will go to an undocumented household or a household that has an undocumented people, and they'll confuse that household getting money with that person getting money, but it's actually the money is for the child who is a citizen, not the parent who is not a citizen. So that's where most of that confusion comes from. I'll talk more about that later on in the show. I've got a whole, I've got more to say about that, but that's generally speaking what the confusion around undocumented people getting, tax dollars comes from. Why are you lying? I don't know what I'm lying about. I really don't. When people just say, "Why are you lying?" It's like I'm not lying. And if I'm mistaken, if I'm wrong, and I've said it on the show before. I will look things up and be corrected if I'm wrong, but I'm not lying. Was Obama, Bernie Sanders, and all of them lying when they said? We'll talk about that in a second, but I don't know why you're what you're bringing up with that, Amy. Yeah, she's the I already talked about that. Amy, She is a fraudster. And she's not saying what you said she said. She's saying that she thinks that they knew about it. But also, that's just her opinion. She has no evidence that they did, and she is a fraudster who has every single reason to try and deflect blame from herself. Okay, you're getting all kinds of things confused here. And I did not say economic migration was grounds for asylum. I said that the right to seek asylum is grounds for asylum. I also said that I didn't say anything about economic migration. That's not even a thing. I think that migration, period, is good for the economy. There aren't 12 million people on the backlog. There are not 12 million people on the backlog either. And they're not getting at ABT, Medicaid, Section 8, all of it. None of that is true. I think they're okay. First of all, there's about 11.8 million undocumented immigrants here. That's not counting people that are seeking asylum. I think the total backlog now is like 3.7 million. That predates Biden. A lot of it did happen under Biden, but that's also because a lot of it was shut down under Trump. A lot of it is because things were made worse by the pandemic. So you had an amplification of people seeking asylum. But none of them are getting EBT or Medicaid or Section 8 or any of it. And Section 8, I don't even know what, anyway. What the state of California does is, irrelevant to the federal budget. Yes, and that's paid for with California tax dollars. So you don't believe Bach, but believe every one of Trump's accusers. No. I don't believe it. How many of Trump's accusers are like literally accused, are convicted of fraud for the fraud they're trying to deflect blame from? It's like, it's possible that some people tell the truth and some people lie. It's not like you have to believe everybody or believe nobody. Like, yes, that's the state of California, God. That is not the federal government. That's state laws. The state decided that. The state is paying for that with tax dollars, with state tax dollars. Okay, so let's talk about what we're actually trying to talk about here. Okay, so let's talk about the impact of undocumented immigration on the economy. So right now, there are about 8.3 million people working in the United States that are undocumented. There are about 6 million people in the United States that don't have jobs. There are 6 million people looking for jobs, 8.3 million people that are undocumented and working. So just from the upshot, we do not have enough people to do all the jobs that we have. Like 8.3 million is a bigger number than 6 million. They make up about 4.8% of the total workforce. Where are they working? What are they doing? Undocumented workers comprise significant portions. Oh, by the way, just again, these are the places where all of this is from. And there's also some stuff like from Wharton and, This is not just, I did not come up with this. This is not numbers I made up or whatever. And I'll just, and this is also in the descriptions section, just like the other one was. And I'll post that link here. If you want to look at it, go ahead. So, because not everybody's on the YouTube thing, so that should give everybody else the link. I never said I did not, like, why are you saying I said things I didn't say? All right, so let's go back here. Whoops. I'm sorry. All right. So what are the key industries? Construction, 13.7% of the workforce. Agriculture, 13.3% of the workforce. Hospitality and food, 8% of the workforce. And manufacturing, 5% of the workforce. So these are the industries that a lot of them occupy. So, and I want to clarify, because sometimes people get confused. I am not saying that 13.7% of undocumented workers are in construction. What I am saying, 13.7% of construction workers are undocumented. And depending on where you're at, some of these numbers can go up or down. Especially when it comes to the manual labor for farms, for instance. I think it can be up to 30 or 40%. The workers that like actually do the not the like literally milking the cow, but attach them to the machines and stuff, like it's like 40 or 60% or something like that. Like a significant amount of our food is dependent on undocumented migrants doing the work. And these are not jobs that somebody is just gonna like, nobody's gonna move to Wisconsin to milk cows. Undocumented workers predominantly fill low-skill positions that complement rather than substitute for native-born workers. They take jobs requiring different skill sets, one that native-born workers are less willing to take at current wage levels. So the wage effects. I know some people are saying it lowers wages, and it does in some ways. Research consistently shows minimal negative wage effects on native-born workers. Overall wage impact is on native workers approximately minus 0.3% to minus 0.4%. But the low-skilled native workers are impacted more. It's mostly the low-skilled native workers, and their wages go down about 0.5% to 1.2%. High-skilled native workers often see small wage increases due to complementary labor effects. So we'll get into that in a second. But actually, some people make more money because of undocumented workers taking low-skilled labor jobs. According to the American Immigration Council, mass deportation of undocumented immigrants would reduce, this is, the American Immigration Council, this is not just some left-wing blog or something. It would reduce the GDP by $1.1 trillion to $1.7 trillion. Remove over 2.5 million workers from construction, agriculture, and hospitality. More than 33% of plasterers, masons, drywalls, installers, and roofers are undocumented. Labor shortages would drive up construction costs and slow housing development. So you can't just look at it from they're taking jobs. You also have to look at they are doing jobs. And so when they're doing jobs, that means that the company they're working for, the farm they're working on, the construction company they're working on, the house they're building, all of that also supplies us with economic value. Everybody hires somebody because it makes them money. Like your boss, your employer is not employing you because they have a big, generous heart. They're employing you because you make them money. And so that means every single one of these, what was the number? 8.5 million? Yeah, 8.3 million. Every one of these 8.3 million people that is doing a job is also contributing to the economy. They're not just taking an American job, they're contributing to the economy. So the work they're doing, that house that gets built gets sold. So that has an economic value. In addition to that, every one of them that is making money is also spending money. So they're not just, picking strawberries, they're buying strawberries. They're renting a house. They're going to the movies. They're doing things with the money that they make, which also adds to the economy. When you take out what they're making and what they're doing, it depletes the GDP. It hurts the economy. Generally speaking, more workers is always good for an economy. Like, this is whether it's legal or illegal, more workers helps the economy. That's why we always look at jobs growth and unemployment as important factors of how the economy is doing. Because more jobs means more economic growth. And then more economic growth means more jobs. So if you take out, what was that percentage again? If you take out almost 5% of the US workforce, you're going to hurt the economy. That's just fundamentally impossible to not hurt the economy by taking out that percent of the workforce. Then when you take out that percent of the workforce and you hurt the economy, when you collapse the GDP that much, when you contract the GDP, you also contract how much money the federal government raises. It all is interconnected. You can't just, it's not all good or all bad. There is actual economics involved, actual macroeconomics. And when macroeconomics look at it, macroeconomists look at it, they say this is bad for the economy. So there is some wage depression, especially for low wage earners, because those are the jobs they're doing. But there's also a positive side of a positive impact undocumented workers have on the economy. And you can't ignore that either. Not if you want to have an honest conversation about it. So we'll get back to this in a second. We're going to see. So you're talking about sheer number of jobs, not wages. No, I'm talking about both, God. And you can't talk about just wages without talking about the sheer number of jobs too. And this is why corporations don't love Democrats. And I don't even think it's a Democrat versus Republican thing. Because they flood the market, job market. No, they flood okay. Let me address a kind of a fundamental flaw in your reasoning here, is that you're looking at it as though all labor is affected. Like whether, you're talking about whatever you're talking about, it's the exact same impact on every single career and job. Like plumbing is affected the same as gardening, and gardening is the same as affected as engineering. But undocumented workers aren't coming over here and stealing engineering jobs. They're not taking engineering jobs. They're not taking the high-end jobs. They're taking the jobs that nobody else wants to do. And they're filling those jobs that need to be done. So I am saying, yes, the sheer number of jobs also matters. But that's also why I say we need to address the immigration laws, so that when people come over and do these jobs, they don't impact. There's not this wage depression for low-end jobs. The problem right now is there's no way for immigrants to do these low-end jobs. There's no real legal way. There's only two kinds of visas. There's the H-2A and the H-2B visas that cover these kind of low-end jobs, like, that don't require a college degree or anything like that. And those the H-2A visas require about a $7,000 per season. The H-2A visas only apply to seasonal agricultural workers. And seasonal agricultural workers cost the farmers about $7,000 per worker per season. So if you need 10 you need 10 workers to do the job, then that's going to cost you $70,000 in addition to what you're already paying. Like it's $7,000 per worker more than hiring somebody illegally. And if you're only making $50,000, that means your farm is automatically going under. So when the laws don't let small farmers stay in business following the law, you need to change the laws. The other kind of temporary work visa that you can get for a low-end worker, which, by the way, Donald Trump uses these with Mar-a-Lago and his other properties. And he actually uses a disproportionate number of them. But the reality is there's only 60,000 of these that are issued every year. And that is most of the undocumented workers have those jobs. I think it's like 6 million or 7 million. Everybody that's not an agricultural seasonal worker gets the H-2B visa. And there's only like 60,000 of those issued a year, and they're temporary. They're not permanent. It's not like you come over here and you can stay over here. And that and you've got like millions of people doing those jobs and only 60,000 visas. So you need more of those visas. This has not had been really adjusted since Reagan. This is an indication that there's a problem with the immigration laws. So if you make it so that people have an easier time hiring people who are migrants to do those jobs, and then you can make it so that they have to have the same pay as domestic people, like as natural citizens. So then that actually solves the problem with wage depression without penalizing companies that can't afford to bring over migrants, and that there's not enough people to do the jobs that need to be done. It's like a catch-22 for them. Like, Americans don't want the jobs and don't do the jobs. And you're making it so that migrants can't come over here to do the jobs. The only people that want to have the jobs and want to do the jobs, you won't let do it. So we need to find a reasonable point to have a discussion here. It's not about massive jobs versus wage depression. It's how can we have people doing these jobs without depressing wages? That should be the conversation we should have. Why is diversity a strength? Who said anything about diversity? I mean, that's a whole other discussion we can have another day, but this is not about diversity. This is just about getting enough people to do the jobs. The government doesn't like undocumented humans because undocumented means they don't pay taxes. Well, they do, though, and we'll get into that in a minute. They do pay taxes. When you go to when you go and you go to a restaurant and you buy food and you pay your meal, do they ask you if you're a citizen and then not charge you sales tax if you're not a citizen? I'm literally saying the opposite. I am saying that, yes, they cause wage depression. I don't know. Are you deaf? Maybe if they have captions on there, you could. I don't know where you're going on about diversity. we can have legal immigration for in-demand jobs, but illegal immigration is never right. But we don't have enough legal. There's not enough room for legal immigrants to do the jobs that need to be done. That's what I'm saying. Right now, you have legally, you can only have 60,000 people doing 6 million jobs. And those 6 million jobs need to be done. You need people to hang that drywall. I'm surprised it's higher than 10%. That's why. The legal immigrants are being used. They're not being used as a slave class. And that's not really that, but you know, like the other side of this is people that, you know, bring like slave class and slave labor and slave wages. They're paid about, they're paid a little bit less, like it's 3 to 5% less. It's not like they're you know, I think like strawberry workers are paid $15 an hour instead of $18 an hour. It's not like draconian or anything, but that is another reason to make it legal, to increase the number of legal migrants who can do that job, because and then if they're here legally, then they have rights that they can advocate for higher wages themselves, which would also mean that domestic labor gets higher wages. But calling them slave labor denies a lot of things, such as they're coming over here voluntarily, they have free will, they have autonomy over their own lives, they can leave if they want, all that kind of stuff. But giving them a legal avenue means the other things, like having a resource against an employer who can hang ice over their heads and all that kind of stuff. Giving them a legal basis for their work protects them too. It protects the domestic workers and it protects the migrant workers. Illegal immigration destroys the work. No, it doesn't. It actually helps the working class, because you know, again, let's say you have a farm, and let's say that the farmer hires 20 people, and he can find 10 local people, citizens, or you know, to do the job locally. But then to hire the rest just to fill the job, like he cannot find people. In fact, the first thing you have to do to hire legal immigrants is prove that you can't fill the jobs. So you have to advertise for like 30 days and nobody fills the jobs. These are jobs that are not getting filled. These are jobs that Americans don't want. And again, there's more jobs than there are unemployed Americans. So let's say that, you know, the farmer does what he has to do. He hires illegal immigrants because that's the only way he can stay in business. So let's say he can't hire those illegal immigrants. You know what happens? He goes out of business. And you know what happens when he goes out of business? Those other 10 people also lose their jobs. Those 10 Americans lose their jobs. There's actual studies that show, is that in here? Did not include. There's studies that show for every million people you deport, you lose 88,000 American jobs, because it's all tied together. It goes back to the whole macroeconomics thing. It's not like these jobs are just those jobs are going to be there, and every job is going to be there, and just every illegal immigrant is taking a job from an American citizen. That's not how any of it works. Yes, that's why I was trying to explain, Gob, that don't confuse the number. When I talk about the percentages, I'm talking about the percentage of people in that field, not the percentage of the migrants who are doing it. and we'll be fine. We have to pay Americans a living wage for some strawberries. But there aren't Americans that want to pick strawberries. That's the problem. Why do people keep talking? Why are you talking about diversity? Nobody's saying anything about diversity right now. They will move to Wisconsin if they were paid. Okay, but then if they're paid adequately, who pays them? Like, so let's say that you've got people that move to Wisconsin to milk cows on this kind of, okay, nobody wants to move to Wisconsin to milk cows, but let's say somebody moves to Wisconsin to milk cows because they can get $70,000 a year. Like, how much would it cost you? How much would you have to be paid to move to Wisconsin to milk cows? Whatever that is going to cause the price of milk to go up. Once you took people off. No, there are more. I don't even know how to, like, there are more people immigrants are doing more jobs than there are Americans who don't have jobs. Yeah, the visas I'm talking about, Gob, are the H-2A and the H-2 visas. H-2A visas cost farmers $7,000 per worker and only apply to agricultural jobs that are seasonal work. H-2B visas, there are only 60,000 of those a year allotted. We need a lot more H-2 visas, H-2B visas, and we need to make it so that H-2A visas are not so expensive for farmers. For H-2A visas, you have to pay the worker the same amount as you would pay a local worker. Plus, you have to pay for their visa. You have to pay for their travel. You have to pay for their room and board the entire time they're there. In addition to paying the same amount of money as you would pay a local worker, without having to pay for the room and the board and all of that. So it actually costs more money, a lot more money, $7,000 a season more than paying a local person. And so then that makes it impossible for farmers. A lot of farms right now, a lot of the private farms are barely even breaking even. Some of them aren't even able to pay off their debt for their seeds and whatnot, especially with all the tariffs and everything. Like, I encourage you to actually look at this from a non-political perspective. Like Wharton and there's all kinds of non-political studies on this that are just purely economics of it. And it's not like 20 million new votes. That's just made up stuff, dude. There aren't 20 million new made up million voters. $15 is the minimum wage, depending on what state you're in. Yeah. In Texas, it's still $7.25. Nobody's arguing for slave labor. Like, this is such a dumb argument. Like, it's so dumb. Nobody's arguing for slave labor. I have never once said anything about slave labor. And I've repeatedly talked about how it actually helps the migrant workers if we just make the visa process easier. I am not talking about anything other than updating immigration laws that haven't been updated in 40 years. I'm not talking about slave labor. Illegal aliens is what the Bill of Rights says they are. And that supersedes any lower ruling. Argo, it's the only legal term they should be. Is this a parody account? Which amendment in the Bill of Rights, which of the first 10 amendments talks about illegal aliens? I would really love to know that. Like, if it's not a parody account, I'm hoping it's a parody account, because if it's a parody account, that's actually pretty good. That's pretty funny. But just for the record, there was no such thing as an illegal alien when they wrote the Constitution. I don't even think it's in any of the amendments. I'm just searching it. The phrase illegal aliens does not appear anywhere in the Constitution. So yeah, I don't know what I'm hoping this is parody, but if it's not, I mean, like, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt and assuming that's parody. Our schools, our housing, our jobs, all because hyper competitive, because we import more people. We don't import people, dude. Like, nobody's importing anybody. It's not like I'm sorry, dude. Can you please at least try to be honest? I'm not saying stuff that's not true. They aren't slave labor. I've addressed that discussion enough time. Okay. The reason that we've had wage stagnation since the 80s is not because of immigrant labor. And you can know this because, like, it's hard to address stupid. Like Bill Murray said, it's hard to win an argument with an intelligent person, but it's damn near impossible to win one with a stupid person. Okay, so no, we are not having wage stagnation because of immigrants. There's all kinds of reasons that we have wage stagnation relative to inflation. And most of that has to do with the Republican politics, if you want to be honest. Has to do with the change in the tax structure and the constant lowering of the top tax rates and constant empowering of the corporate elite. I think it was how much? Okay, here, let me look this up. What is the pay difference from the average worker to the CEO over the last 40 years? Okay, so there's like, if you look at the average CEO, like the CEO compared to the average worker, the average dog, in early 80s it was about 30 to here, sure. Early 80s CEOs earned about 30 to 50 times the average worker's pay. 1989 the ratio was about 58 to 1. 2000 the dot-com peak, it was 366 to 1. And now it's getting closer to 250 to 351, depending on methodology. Key findings has the ratio has increased roughly 6 to 10 times since the early 80s, while average worker compensation has grown modestly, adjusted for inflation. CEO pay has skyrocketed, driven primarily by stock-based compensation and stock options. Okay. Is this because of illegal immigrants? No, the CEO explosion and immigration are separate phenomena with different causes. Stock-based compensation. What actually affects workers' wages? The factors suppressing average worker pay include union decline, which, by the way, has to do with the Republican Party's war on unions, automation and technology, globalization and offshoring, weakened labor protections, and increased corporate concentration monopoly power. Research consistently shows undocumented immigration has minimal impact on overall wages. Effects are concentrated among workers with high school diplomas in special sectors. Like I said, the jobs they're doing, they drive down the wages marginally in, but most jobs are not the jobs they're doing. And the jobs they're not doing don't have any effect on those wages. Can you look into the impact of sending US dollars back to their home country? A large portion of them do. Yeah, I've looked into this before. I'll just look that up for you. But I think this has been overstated. And this is also like, I'll just ask about immigrants in general because that's more money. It's not just illegal immigrants. Legal immigrant, like, on the one hand, you can't say, well, they're paid this slave labor, and on the other hand, they're sending all this money out of the economy, because if they're barely making enough money to survive, how are they sending out all this other money? The economic is significant but nuanced. It's not as simple as money leaving bad for economy. In 2024, formal remittances, that's the word, sent from the United States totaled $93 billion. Estimates that include informal channels place the figure as high as $230 billion. Mexico received $62.5 billion. Latin America, so 96.6% of Mexico's total remittances came from the United States. Latin America and the Caribbean received $161 billion. India received an estimated 28%. Effect on the U.S. economy. Money sent abroad doesn't circulate in local U.S. communities, can be seen as reducing consumer spending that would otherwise boost U.S. businesses. Some economists frame it as wealth transfer out of the economy. Offsetting factors often include immigrants must earn this money first. They're working, paying taxes, contributing labor. Money sent it typically post-income, already taxed at U.S. rates. So they've already paid the income tax on it before it went out, so it's not affecting the other thing. Immigrants' overall economic contribution, labor consumption taxes typically exceeds what they remit. Because again, they can't be making almost nothing and sending everything they make. Remittance represents only 10 to 15% of typical immigrant earnings. Most income stays in the U.S. And again, this is all immigrants, not just illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants, by and large, make less money and so probably send home a lower percentage of that. Effects on receiving countries. Remittance amounts to 5%. Okay, so we don't really need to go over that. And then the framing matters, saying $93 billion lost assumes money belongs to the U.S. economy rather than the workers who earned it. Okay. What about just illegal immigrants? Just to see if there's so I used to work blue collar and I had 30 immigrants that all drove down my wages. Yes, and like I said, those kind of jobs, they drive down the I don't know why I say things to you, because you don't seem to hear the things I am saying to you. I say yes, those kinds of jobs, it drives down the wages. But there are all kinds of jobs that it does. Engineers are not getting paid less money because undocumented migrants are coming over and stealing their jobs. The low wage, low skill, well, I don't even like saying low skill, but requires less education, less formal education. I mean, like I worked as a painter when I was in college too. So I mean, I know there's a skill involved there. But so I like to say it's low skill. You can walk into like, I'm sure you can. I know I can. You can walk into a house and see if it's painted by somebody that actually knew what they were doing or not. I mean, you'd think, oh, it's just putting paint on the walls. But, like knowing how to roll out a paint is, there's techniques involved. So I don't like saying low skilled labor, but you don't need a bachelor's degree to become a painter. And so these are the jobs that get done. And and a large part of them is because other people aren't doing them. In your case, you were doing it and you lost your job. And I know people that are in that sector that are affected. But again, this is why I think that people that are so you are in this job, right? And this is this would not be an agricultural visa. This would be an H-2B visa, which is non-agricultural, and which there's only 60,000 of. Well, people would have to be, like those painters would have to be paid the same wage as you. They couldn't lowball you if we increase the number of H-2B visas. We need to make it so that illegal immigrants get paid what U.S. workers make, not that U.S. workers make as much as illegal immigrants make. I don't know if you grasp what I'm saying here. They should be paid more. You shouldn't be paid less. If they're paid more, it's not going to affect you. Good question. Not Trump. But they are paid on. Yes, and that's again, like that's why I'm saying. But why are they? Some of them are paid under the table, but some of them are paying Social Security. Some of them aren't being paid under the table. Some of them have fake Social Security numbers that never get money back. We'll go into the government aspect of things in a minute. No, it doesn't. It drives up the price of housing. Well, we'll get into the price of housing in a minute. And it drives down the value of wages. And I don't know why you keep arguing that it drives down the... I am not arguing with you that it doesn't drive down the value of wages. You are not listening to what I am saying. So I'm just going to stop responding to you. If GDP equals good, why not import... Nobody imports workers. They are coming over on their own free volition. And it's making it so that we increase the number of people who can come over here legally. And GDP up does equal good. All right. Let's see if anybody. They said half their money. They don't send half of their money back. How do they make so little money and send half of their money back to, like, come on, think. Let's call it Schrodinger's immigrant. It's like some people want to make it that immigrants are sending out all illegal immigrants are both making money hand over fist and sending it all out of the country. And then at the same time, they're like not making any money. And so then, there's slave laborers that are making all these money. It's like, come on, be consistent. across Oregon. We'll get into that in a minute. But why? All right. Again, I'm just going to. Do you think I'm sorry, you're dominating the conversation, God. Just like a minimum wage, not a single person can live off it, but people do those jobs. I'm not defending slavery in a form of a good economy. No, I'm not. And it's just a lie to say I'm saying that. And I've very clearly delineated the difference between what I'm saying, what you say I'm saying. Why do you have to lie about what I am saying? Like, be honest. I have definitely said the opposite of what you are saying I'm saying. The jobs are done by undocumented people because employers discovered it. No, they are. Is 8.5 million a bigger number than 6 million? Yes or no? None of them are voting. Do you think that? Okay, anyway. My goodness, if only, like, is there any intelligent comments here? Yeah, that offshoring jobs is a big part of it. I also know that it is easy enough to get a green card that only a criminal would choose. You don't know that. You have no idea how to get a green card. If it were easy to get, it's not that easy to get a green card. And in fact, about 95 to 98% of the population of the world outside of white countries can't even get one. Like, there's no legal avenue for, like, most of the world to even get a green card. If you don't have a bachelor's degree and you don't have family that lives here, there is literally no way to get a green card. Even if you can get a temporary visa, those are temporary. All right, so let's go into. There's been a lot of talk about how immigrants drive up the cost of housing, which is another fake talking point. Undocumented immigrant ownership rate is approximately 31%. That means 31% of undocumented immigrants own their own homes. And they represent 3.2% of the U.S. population, creating demand across rental and ownership markets. Native-born ownership, approximately 65%. So if you're native-born, your chances of owning your own home are more than twice of what an undocumented person is. This lower rate means undocumented immigrants disproportionately rent rather than buy. Impact. Rental housing. Increased demand in low to moderate income rental markets, particularly in urban areas and regions with high immigrant populations. Housing supply. There's the two sides of it, right? There's the demand and the supply. Undocumented workers in construction help build housing supply. More than 1.4 million undocumented workers in construction, 13.7% of construction workers. Housing demand concentrated in specific metros. Los Angeles, New York, Houston, Dallas, Miami, Chicago. Modest upward pressure on rents in high concentration areas, but significant contribution to housing construction keeps overall effects limited. That's the price effects. Mass deportation would create a housing crisis. Well, an even bigger housing crisis. Removing 13.7% of construction workforce would dramatically slow new housing construction, particularly considering what these undocumented workers are doing, which is things like hanging drywall. This would actually worsen the housing shortage, driving prices up despite reduced demand. Construction costs would increase due to labor shortages. So less people means more the price of wages go up, which means that the price of the house goes up. The net effect would be higher housing prices, not higher housing prices. Higher housing costs, not lower. In addition, along with paying this rent and owning these houses, they pay property taxes, either through property taxes directly or through their rent, which is, the property taxes are passed on through rent. Undocumented immigrants pay property taxes either directly as homeowners or indirectly through rent. Landlords pass property taxes on to renters. This contributes to local schools, infrastructure, and taxes. So we talk about like, oh yeah, this is one of the problems with a lot of these things that talk about how immigrants don't pay taxes. They're only looking at certain taxes like payroll taxes. And they're not looking at, they're still paying the property taxes. They're still paying the sales taxes. They're still paying, like if they have, internet fees or whatever, they're still paying those taxes. If you owned a business, would you hire an employee that you knew was going to cost you money? I don't know. I don't know what that, I don't know why you're asking that. We use undocumented because Americans are lazy. We use undocumented because Americans are lazy. I don't know if it's Americans are lazy. I mean, it's not everybody that's unemployed lives near a farm, for instance, is physically capable of going out and growing, and plucking strawberries. Like, what about a 52-year-old man that has a back problem? That doesn't make them lazy. It just makes them a little bit older and not capable of picking strawberries. All employees cost money. All employees cost money, and all employees make money. The whole point of hiring somebody to do a job is it makes the employer money. You're not the person at McDonald's. The McDonald's benefits from every employer. One of the things that I get really annoyed by is when people act like call people job creators and things like that, as though creating a job is some sort of kindness, that the employer doesn't get a benefit from that. I'm not a mathematician, but BlackRock owns 55,000 homes by an imported 20 million people. You're apparently not a English teacher either. And also, definitely not. There are not 20 million. There's only 40 million immigrants, period, legal and illegal. And people owning things is good for the economy. People renting things is good for the economy. Well, but can I point out the assumption that is the flaw in your logic here is the assumption is that Americans would otherwise have those jobs. Again, there's been studies like where they've done mass deportations. For every million people that are deported, 88,000 American jobs are lost. It actually hurts jobs to deport people because those people are spending money and they're doing jobs and they're actually also contributing to the economy. It's not just they're taking away somebody's job. They go out and they spend jobs. By spending money, they create jobs. So, like actual studies where they've actually looked at the number of people that were deported, and like in 2023, they did a study on this. And they found out, contrary to what people think, illegal immigrants actually add to employment. They don't replace it. The assumption is if like as soon as you take a deported person out of a job, an American steps in to do that job. Well, that's not what that's not what happens. We didn't bring over 20 million people. No, so no, but again, this is why I'm talking about we need immigration reform. I think everyone needs to pay taxes. I think they all need to pay taxes. I think if we make it so that undocumented immigrants become documented immigrants that can still do the job and still contribute to the economy, they will also pay more in taxes. In fact, let me go on here. Let's go and talk about the actual tax aspect of these things. Right now, total taxes are paid by 96.7 billion. The undocumented people pay $96.7 billion in taxes in 2022. 25.7 billion of that was paid into Social Security alone. None of that 25.7 billion will ever go to the undocumented migrants that paid it. This is some of it is through ITINs, which are like a thing, and then some of it is just fake Social Security numbers. But undocumented migrants are ineligible for Social Security and ineligible for Medicaid and or Medicare and Medicaid, but they will never see that money. So tax breakdown, federal taxes, they spend $59.4 billion, and 37% of that, or $37 billion, is in state and local taxes. So when they pay the sales tax, they don't go into a store and buy something and then pull out their illegal immigrant card and then get a tax write-off on their sales taxes. They're still paying those state and local taxes. That commerce still happens. So when then they're doing like the federal and Social Security taxes, because not everybody that's hiring somebody that's undocumented knows that person is undocumented. Some of them are have fake documents and stuff. And we covered this a little bit yesterday when Ronald Reagan passed his last immigration reform and made penalties for knowingly hiring illegal aliens. It created a kind of a fake document in its industry. So you have people that work on fake documents. So they pay $15.1 billion in sales and excise taxes, $10.4 billion in property taxes, either through direct ownership or through rent. They pay income taxes, both state and federal, using individual taxpayer identification numbers. And they have payroll taxes automatically withheld from their paychecks. ITEP estimates approximately 60% compliance on federal income taxes and undocumented migrants. This is based on IRS data on ITIN filers and research on tax filing behavior. So 60% of them are paying federal taxes. And I know somebody just said, oh, so it's okay if none of them pay, or if some of them pay tax. Well, what would be better is if all of them pay taxes. They all pay taxes no matter what, but it'd be even better if They all paid more taxes or the same taxes as anybody else. Undocumented immigrants contribute billions to Social Security but are legally barred from receiving benefits. Right now, $1.3 trillion in total wages in Social Security earnings suspense file. These are from Social Security accounts that will never be collected. And they're in, they keep track of that. $1.3 trillion that they have paid, and a total of $1.3 trillion that illegal immigrants have paid in Social Security taxes that they will never see back. This $788 billion from the surge in the immigration surge in under Biden, that will end up resulting in $788 billion in taxes over the next 10 years. And projected benefit cost for the same population is $177 billion. Now, I know some of you said you're not math majors, but I'm pretty sure $788 billion is a bigger number than $177 billion. State and local impact. The state and local governments see different fiscal patterns. Direct net costs $9.2 billion, 0.3% of state local spending. Primary costs K through 12 education, emergency medical care. States bear education costs for children, including U.S.-born citizens. Federal government captures more tax revenue while states bear more service costs. So, like somebody was talking about California. Undocumented workers do cost the states more money, but they don't cost the federal taxes federal government more money. Or at least there's a less positive impact for states. State and local taxes, they pay $29.3 billion annually. All right, I'm sorry. So if you were to look at the net impact on the fiscal budgets, it would cost federal taxes would lose a net of $46.8 billion annually. State and local taxes would decline $29.3 billion annually. Social Security would see a $25.7 billion decline annually. And for every million deported, it costs the country $8.9 billion in tax revenue. So there's all this talk about how they cost the government money. They actually have a positive impact on government budgets. Now, that's if they work. Okay. But you were just accusing them of stealing all the jobs. The number 20 million is something you made up. 20 million. There are not 20 million illegal immigrants, Gob. If you don't have anything to provide a country, you have no right to expect to move there. I don't know what that has to do with anything. Everything this guy reads the chat, he just stares off the camera like he's never heard English. Well, some of these chats are barely in English. It takes a while to decipher what you mean. 20 million. First of all, there's not 20 million people. Secondly, not every one of them is buying a new home. There are 11 point. We went over all this yesterday. The number 20 million is a made up number. United States is computer generated economy. All numbers are no physical dollar. Okay. I see what you're trying to say. We are not a species backed. Is it species backed? We're not like gold backed or silver backed or something. There's no hard species, no metal or something holding up the dollar, and hasn't been for like over 100 years, and it would just completely destroy the economy if we went back to that. But the dollar itself, the value of the dollar is the value of the dollar. Let's talk about if I'm selling a house, who do I care who buys it? How do I? Yeah, I don't care if you're from Cleveland or Zimbabwe. It goes to the highest bidder. And the thing is, if you're an illegal immigrant and you're buying a house, you're most likely paying cash for it. Like, banks aren't in the habit of giving illegal immigrants housing loans. $20 million people did not come into the. This is not true. We went over all this yesterday. You were here. 20 million people did not come into the country and buy houses under Biden and under the Biden administration. 20 million people did not even come into the country and stay into the country. There are 11.8 million illegal immigrants in the country now, including the ones that were here before Biden. All right. They replace Americans by working for less than standard wages for the sector. You can't get, and I'm not trying to get around that fact, Rodney. I wish you would listen to what I am saying. I am saying if we make it so that illegal immigrant, like if we change our immigration laws so that employers are incentivized to hire people that can work here legally, then that changes the game. That changes the game for the local employers, and that changes for local workers and for migrant workers. I don't know how hard. And again, these are a very small subset of jobs. There are all kinds of jobs that are not affected by migrant workers. The ones that are would actually be protected if we changed our immigration laws. Because if you change the immigration laws so that it's easier to come over here and work these jobs, then that means that you can actually control that better. That means that you can enforce the minimum wage on those jobs. You can enforce wage mandates. You can say, all right, this is, like the average person makes this much money on this job, so you have to pay the average immigrant that much. But when you have 60,000 jobs going to 6 million people, it's just chaotic. It's not, that's the net, dude. The numbers I was reading are the net. And again, illegal immigrants do not get welfare. They don't use welfare. And we'll talk about this in a minute, but 6.5 million encounters. Yes, encounters does not mean that every single encounter is somebody living here right now. And this is why I went over yesterday the difference between an encounter and a gotaway and an asylum seeker and refugee, and what Title 42 means, and how somebody could be like count as 10 encounters and not be over here at all. I'm not going through all that again. You are here. I can't help it if you don't listen. Not everybody is buying a house or even has the means. They can't even pay for cars now, let alone. It's so weird how they're like getting slave laborers and buying all the houses. Isn't it? The income doesn't come back. And we already covered that. The reason that there's a lot of reasons that housing went up. That it's not all because of Biden, and it's not all because of illegal immigrants. A lot of it has to do with there was, first of all, you're talking about the price of buying a new home versus the long-term cost of buying a new home versus the price of housing, which are two different things. But part of the reason is that during the pandemic, the mortgage interest was like at an all-time low, like 3.5%, which, like 1% greatly reduces the 30-year mortgage value. And you're talking about like inflation, but inflation, especially like a lot of the inflation costs that were way up, have nothing to do with Joe Biden or anything. They had to do with, like Walter here is saying, a lot of it has to do with supply chain issues. And nothing at all to do with undocumented workers. Kelly is regarding people working with fake documentation. Should they be jailed and deported? Yeah. I mean, I'm not like anti-law. What I am saying is we need to change the laws. If immigration laws are hurting our country, we need to change our laws. Why insist on having laws? Just, if the law is a bad law, change the law. I'm not saying break the law. I'm saying change the law. We haven't had any serious changes to our immigration laws in 40 years. We have had a lot of things in our country that have changed in the last 40 years, including things like the fertility rate. And that matters a lot because our population, sans migration, is stagnant now. We need people to come in and do these jobs. Tariffs did not bring $18 trillion into the U.S. into the U.S. and government. Okay, tariffs did not bring $18 trillion in new U.S. investment. It did not. There has not been a single dollar invested. There has been Trump proclamations about money that has been promised to be invested, but money that's actually been invested is none. And foreign investment is actually down under Trump. Under the first year under Trump, foreign investment actually went down. $600 billion in tax revenue from corporations? No, it did not. What it did is it relocated money that went that poor people had to pay more money for goods and services because the corporations had to compensate for the tariffs. And the $1.2 trillion into the trade deficit is just because people stopped exporting, because people stopped importing, because the tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs. None of this is actually good. Really, dude, Gob, you need to read. Not the case. I left the military 10 years ago and was getting in trouble for making my folks speak English. I don't know who you're talking to. How about going after the employer, sir, if you have a problem with employing illegal aliens? I feel like, again, on the other side of this, I feel like that's another reason we need to change the immigration laws, not like worry about who gets arrested or whatever. A lot of the people that are, it's not the rich corporate farms that are hiring illegal citizens or illegal immigrants. It's the small private farms who are going to go under. The rich corporate farms have like barracks and stuff that they can put people on. They already own the barracks. It's not costing them money. They can still make a profit. But because they have to pay for housing and rent and all of that, it's not costing the average Large corporate farm, $7,000 per seasonal worker. It's only for the small private farmer. The 20 million, again, it's you do not understand the distinction between an encounter and somebody that's actually in the country right now. It's not making things up. It's not understanding the words you're using. Encounter is somebody that was encountered. So, like, if somebody came over, like under Title 42, somebody could come over and they could, request asylum, asylum or whatever, and be told no, and then they could be sent back. And then the next day they could come over again, and then they could be sent back. And then the next day they could come over and then be sent back. They could cross over and request asylum 10, 20 times and never actually enter the country and be denied all 20 times, not be over here at all, and count as 20 encounters. And according to your logic, they bought 10 houses while they were over here. Truth is, the gold standard made the economy far less stable than today. All right, I'm going to zip down here. Hey, Rainbow. How's it going? Good to see you here. All right, so now let me go on to the next section of this. So I'm going to want to talk about some fake narratives that are out there that get tossed about a lot. First one is illegal immigrants don't pay taxes. This is completely false. Undocumented immigrants pay $96.7 billion in federal, state, and local taxes in 2022. How they pay $15.1 billion in sales tax, $10.4 billion in property taxes, filed using ITINs. So we just talked about that. So illegal immigrants are a burden on Social Security. This is backwards. They subsidize Social Security. Undocumented immigrants paid $25.7 billion into Social Security in 2022, but are legally barred from receiving benefits. The earnings suspense file contains $1.3 trillion in wages through 2014. So that's 10 years ago. So it's got to be more than that since then. Approximately 75% estimated to be from undocumented workers. These contributions go into the trust fund, but workers can't claim benefits. SSA's official position, we estimate the earnings by unauthorized immigrants result in a net positive effect on net Social Security financial status generally. Stephen Gross, Chief Actuary, Social Security Administration, 2013. Okay. Illegal immigrants abuse welfare programs. They are legally barred from almost all programs. The truth. Undocumented immigrants are categorically ineligible for welfare, TANF, food stamps, also, actually known as SNAP, but, we still call them welfare and food stamps, even though those things went out with the 90s. Medicaid, except emergency care, supplemental security income, SSI, earned income tax credit, child tax credit in most cases, Social Security benefits, and Medicare benefits. Every legal immigrants, even legal immigrants, face 5-year waiting periods before accessing most federal benefits. The anchor baby sleight of hand. When studies claim undocumented immigrants receive welfare, they're often counting benefits received by a U.S.-born citizen children. These children are American citizens entitled to the same benefits as any other American child. So when you see studies that say things like, the people that receive health care or receive Medicare, 50.2% have of undocumented immigrants, households that have, an undocumented citizen or whatever. Whenever you see the word household, that means that somebody in that household is a citizen that is getting benefits, and somebody that is not a citizen lives in the same house. It's a dishonest way of framing it. Hey, Scam Likely, how you doing today? I think he got mad. He got mad because he kept getting told that there aren't 20 million illegal immigrants here because of Joe Biden. Why are Americans not reproducing? Is it too expensive to raise a child? It's a good question, Ronnie. There's actually kind of a pattern when nations do well, for fertility drops, and it's not because people don't want children, it's because they don't need children. When you look at like poor countries, you have like the survival rate of children drops, and the need, back in the 1800s, it was like a lot of your labor was your kids. Like when you were working on the farm, your kids went out and milked the cows and all of that, and then your kids took care of you when you got older. So your kids were also like your retirement plan. But as a nation evolves and gets wealthier, then the need for that diminishes, and so the need for kids diminish, and so then the actual fertility rate drops. And it is getting more expensive to raise a child. And I think right now, in this day and age, there's a lot of people that don't want kids because the kids are like, nobody wants their kids to grow up in a world that's going to collapse in 30, 40 years because of climate change. Dang it, Gob is back. I might start sewing a dress because that's something to do. Wow. I'm tempted to drop a pun like, so what? But my cats are smarter than your honor student at Heritage Elementary. My old cat, Care Bear, he was smarter than Donald Trump, and he was orange too. What do you call Elon stealing all our money? Is there a punchline to that? It sounds like there should be a punchline. Okay. So myth number 4, illegal immigrants take jobs from Americans. Economists consistently find this false. Labor market research shows, this is what this study I was citing earlier. Immigrants and native workers take different types of jobs. Native workers gravitate toward jobs requiring English skills and work authorization. Immigrants fill labor gaps in construction, agriculture, and hospitality. Overall wage impact on native workers is about -0.3 to -0.4%. Job creation through entrepreneurship. This is actually a fascinating thing. Immigrants are 80% more likely than native-born Americans to start a business, which means that they actually hire people. These businesses create jobs for both immigrants and native-born workers. So that's another thing, is like, you don't think of it, but what about the immigrants that start businesses and hire Americans? Labor market context. 8.1 million job openings, 6.8 million unemployed workers. So immigrants will help fill persistent labor gaps. So even if every single unemployed person took the job of to dig the job of undocumented worker, you're still short 1.3 million. We just don't have enough Americans to do the work that all the undocumented workers do. I'm glad. I was hoping you'd get it, but I thought you would. The word I actually, I've got to say that pun. I have been sitting on that pun for like years, waiting for the right opportunity to use it. The world's ending in 30. Well, I know you don't believe in climate change, but a lot of people do. And a lot of people understand that there is going to be a huge collapse of civilization if we don't do something about it. Like actual, those of us who engage in actual reality are very, very concerned about it. And a lot of people that are very, very concerned about it are not wanting their kids to go through that. So they're not having kids. Like it's and there's the water levels rising. One of my favorite like viral YouTube clips is the guy where Ben Shapiro's like, well, what's to prevent people from just selling their houses? And the guy smashes through the wall like Jack Nicholson, and he's like, who's gonna buy the house? Aquaman? Like, and it's not just that, it's not just like sea levels rising. That's not just the issue. The issue is that entropy is a real thing. So I'll just real quick explain what climate change is and why it's an issue. What happens is it's not that just that the globe is warming. It's not just global warming. It's that the North Pole and the Arctic area is the heat, it's warming up a lot faster than the equator. And if you've ever held your finger up against a window in the winter and you feel like there's a draft there, that's actually not like a wind coming to your finger. You're not feeling the wind blow. What you're feeling is the heat leaving your body and going out to the cold. It's not the cold coming to your hand, it's the heat from your hand going to the cold. Because entropy says that, you go from greater energy to less energy. And the warmer something is, if something is warmer than the other, the heat will transfer from warm to cold. And the greater that temperature difference is, the faster that change will happen. The faster that transfer will happen. So we have all kinds of things that our climate depends on. But two of the biggest ones are water movement, also known as ocean currents, and air movement, also known as wind. And when the North Pole is heating up faster than the equator, that means that those currents and those winds slow down, which affects all kinds of things in our climate. It affects seasons. It affects things like I can't remember the name of the current, but there's a current that goes from South America all the way up to near Europe. And that's why Europe is so much warmer than the United States is when you compare their latitudes. Like you think of Rome as being like Florida, like type climates, like Italy and Florida are similar, right? But actually, if you look at like if you look at a city that's if you want to look at like the latitude, the city that's on the same latitude as Rome is Chicago. You don't think of Chicago and Italy as being the same climate, right? So why is that? It's because there's this current that goes from South America up to Europe. And that current brings warms up Europe more than anything else. And that's why we have this, warm climate in Europe. Well, when you start slowing that current down, then you have a less warm Europe. And so it's not all just like warming here and whatever. It's a change in climate. Europe could, lots of parts of Europe could actually cool. And then you've got like India, where the monsoon seasons, and Pakistan and that whole area where the monsoon seasons are going to be affected, which is going to make areas right now that are huge for agriculture either flood or have huge droughts, because it's affecting the actual weather patterns. It's not the weather, what temperature is it today. It's the weather patterns globally that are going to be affected. It's why we have hurricanes that are getting more intense, because it's not just the weather from the heat from the north and the south. It's that the water in the ocean is heating up, and the temperature in the atmosphere isn't. And so that temperature difference also goes up. So then when you have a hurricane, what happens is the intensity of that hurricane, because the air is moving up, that increases. The speed of the hurricane and the intensity of the hurricane gets worse. It's not that we're having more hurricanes, it's that we're having more intense hurricanes that is affecting climate. So there's all these things that are genuinely affecting climate. This is not just something that is going to happen, it is something that is presently happening. It's not like, people say, oh, well, this thing that they said was going to happen. And it's like, that's dishonest too, because these other things that we warned about and said were going to happen didn't happen because we did something about them. Anyway, yeah. So a lot of people that actually understand that, the second law of thermodynamics is not something that liberals made up, are actually concerned about climate change. Long ago, when I asked about Americans having kids, it was related to you saying we needed immigrants because, yeah, okay. I don't understand what the conflict is. But yeah, U.S. population is stagnant, and yes, that's one reason we need immigrants. I don't understand why there's a conflict. The American population is aging. We've got aging population. The boomers are dying and they're retiring, which means jobs are not filled anymore, which means, we need people to do those jobs. Okay, kids that are born this year will be born in 30, 40, or will be alive in 34 years. You seem to have missed the point. Somebody asked why aren't Americans having kids? And it's because those kids are going to be alive. Gulfstream. Yeah, there's a... It's I think there's like a north, but yeah, I guess the Gulfstream works. Then we'll die because then all die, bro. Who cares? Then, well, apparently people that don't want to have children care. The Rockies are getting snow. The Colorado River is going dry. I'm still an hour behind. Yeah, I skipped up. Long ago when I asked, okay, so we've seemed to have it seems like all the bots have left. So it looks like sometimes it's like you can tell. I noticed like the when Gob left, it's like 15 people left at the same time. So I'm not sure that no conflict with you, but was wondering if the expense of raising kids. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. I think that there's probably a combination of reasons. I think one is there are some people that it's probably expensive. I think that some people they're just beyond the childbearing years. like like me and my wife are in our 50s. No kids are going to be happening anytime soon. Some people there's just they don't want to bring kids into this world that they know. I know people that are just like they just decide not to have kids because they're afraid of what the world is going to be like in 40 or 50 years. Yeah, I it's like hard sometimes to keep track of everybody, and then you get way behind, and then you skip over, and then people get mad at you for skipping for how come you didn't respond to my comment? And it's like just hard to get to every single comment. All right, so let's go back here. Myth: illegal immigrants increase crime. This is a favorite. Data shows the opposite is true. Crime statistics: undocumented immigrants commit crimes at roughly half the rate of native-born Americans. More capita crime rate for native-born Americans is approximately double. Well, that's kind of the same thing twice. Undocumented immigrants are 26% likely to commit homicide. Historical trend: 1990 to 2013, undocumented population more than tripled. And in this this is the other side of this is you don't see like crime rates going up along with surges in undocumented immigrants. Like over the last 4 years, where they've tried to put all the crime in the history of the country on Joe Biden, crime actually went down. Violent crime went down during this, supposed 20 million influx of undocumented people. So that's just a racist narrative. What percentage of those not having kids for reasons do you think? That is a really, I wonder if there's a poll on that. I would imagine that if I would imagine that right now Trump supporters and like the right are more likely to have kids than people that are on the left, and I think that's partly because people on the left are less likely to want to have kids because of the reasons I was stating about climate change, but also because people on the right are more likely to want to have kids because the way that Trump needs and Stephen Miller and all these clowns need to make everything political. They've made it like do your patriotic duty and have white babies. So did you see the report today? Murder rate is down 20% last year. I did not. It's good news. I mean, but that's a continuing trend, right? It's not like Trump. There's no policy Trump did to reduce the murder rate, unless you want to say somehow sicking the National Guard in Los Angeles for a couple of months made the murder rate nationwide go down. It's been going down. It's just a continuation of a trend, and these things usually have a lot more to do with local policing than anything. Oh, show me one quote of anyone in the administration saying that to have white babies. Oh no, that I mean, there's all this stuff about sponsoring babies, and if you have a baby, do your patriotic duty and have a baby. They don't specifically say white babies, but they're sitting there trying to kick everybody out of the country that's not white. I'm being a bit hyperbolic here, but I mean, you think about who votes for Trump and who their audience is. I should do thanks, Scam. Actually, do we co-follow each other on Twitter? I seem to recognize you from Twitter. Will you do X Spaces? We need you here. I should do more X Spaces. So Ronnie says you say it's hard to get to every comment, yet you spend so much time on a guy, Gob, who's clearly trolling you. Yeah, you're right. That's a flaw. I'm trying to work on that. What I do is I kind of scroll down and I just grab on the first one that doesn't say you're an idiot, and people like Gob tend to spam the comments, so I end up landing on those a lot. And then I try to engage honestly, but then they don't really want to engage honestly. So I think we're drying up the conversation here. So I think we'll end here. We'll end a little bit early today. Since unless anybody has anything to add. Anybody have anything else? Well, please, this administration has a clear agenda. It doesn't want anyone of color anymore. The only idea, yeah. I mean, you can tell that from not only the people that are being like the whole replacement theory is such a clear message from the right, or from the Trump administration and Stephen Miller. And it's like, you don't have to stand on a house on a rooftop and yell, "I'm a racist," to make it clear you're a racist. They amplify every replacement theory message they can, and they're doing all this stuff to conflict it. Even like with the giving people money to have kids, or like where they're sponsoring kids, give them a education fund or whatever, but even those are like, they only apply to certain zip codes or whatever. Like, thanks for stopping by, Ronnie. I guess you'll concede. I don't know what point I'm conceding. Oh, show me one. Yeah, no, I'm not conceding the point. I'm just saying that you don't have to be explicitly say it's only applying to white children to understand it's only applying to white children. I mean, let me hang on a second. Let's see. Okay, you're likely asking about one of two things: one that actually passed, one that's still just a proposal. American children born from 2025 through 2028 qualify for a Trump account baby bonus, a $1,000 deposit from the U.S. government, which was included in the One Beautiful Big Beautiful Bill Act that passed in 2025. All children born between January 25 and January 29 are eligible as long as the child is a U.S. citizen and both parents have a social security number. So right away, it's like if your parents are immigrants, you don't qualify. Government deposits $1,000 into an account. Parents can contribute up to $5,000 a year. Employees can contribute up to $2,500 a year. Money invested in stock index funds grow tax deferred until 18, can be used for college, job training, first home, or starting business. If used for anything so this is it's in combination with other things about the crime. What about the crime? Oh, I thought I commented on that. Yeah, I think that's great, but I also think it's a continuation of a trend that already existed. Like murder rates and crime rates have been going down, and it's not necessarily anything to do with Trump. And Trump hasn't really done anything specifically about crime that would have gone into effect other than, sick the National Guard and ICE on people. Like there's nothing he's done to really affect crime. All right. No, no. Is this the one you're talking about? Show me a quote or no. Did you see the report today? Murder rates down 20. Is that the one you're talking about? Still waiting for my 5K from Elon. And aren't we supposed to get like our tariff boost thing? If you use the R word, there's what percentage of those not having kids for reasons? Yeah, that I don't see any long quotes from. Is it in? I don't know, dude. I'm sorry. If you want to, you can call that number, the 512-980-4061, and leave a comment and leave a voicemail, and then I'll listen to that. Maybe that would help. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm not skipping over anything you said. Unless you use the R word in there. I got tired of people using the R word in spite of how many times I asked. So I have added a block to anybody that uses just block any comments using the R word. Maybe I don't want 18 years of child support. So I don't know what to do. I don't know if you're trying to call or not. Myth study. Studies show illegal immigrants cost $150 billion a year. The $150.7 billion a year comes from FAIR, Federation for American Immigration Reform, an immigration restrictionist advocacy group, not a neutral research body. It's got some methodological problems. First, it undercuts the tax revenue significantly. It says they only pay $31 billion in taxes, but ITEP found fair undercounts by about 1/3. It's actually about 97 billion. Citizen children, which is what we were talking about before, where it includes costs for U.S. born children and illegal immigrant costs, which these are children for citizens entitled to benefits like any other American child because they use this language about immigrants' households. Like, so if you have a child in your household and an immigrant in the household, they conflate those things. Looks at annual costs only versus ignores long-term fiscal contribution and economic growth effects. So, like when you're looking at the asylum seekers or whatever, they might initially be cost more money, but in the long term, they're going to end up paying, more in taxes. And I think for the first 3 months or the first 6 months, there's a drain. They're net negative, but then for the rest of the time they're here, they're net positive. Immigrants, all levels of government. So the FAIR combines only the federal tax money spent, but they combine all levels of government and when it comes to the money spent. Immigrants in recent surge will pay $788 billion in federal taxes over the next 10 years and receive only 177 in benefits. Net effect, immigration reduces the federal deficit. It doesn't add to it. I'm going to. Oh, I thought about that, but I didn't think I did. I thought about it, like using it as a noun. But I think I didn't because I thought anyway. If I did, I'm sorry. I'll undo that. I really hate that. I mean, if you want to refer to undocumented immigrants, then just refer to undocumented immigrants. Like I don't like dehumanizing people. Actually, I should block the word maggots too. I really detest I'm growing a mullet. Should I receive a tax break for this? I'll have to mull it over. There's a pun for you. I'm Gen X, by the way. So am I. All right. Going to give you a couple more minutes here to wait on you for your comment. Things have really died down here. You like the mullet over? Just trying to wait for real RJ there to get his comment in. Did he leave it up here? Let's see if he up to this. Nope, still no voicemail. So trying to give him, I'll give him a couple, I'll give him a bit more time. Wow, we're dropping listeners. Nobody's watching now. All right, we're just hanging out here for no reason. All right, guys, think we're gonna call it. Sorry, real RJ, if you're Oh, if there's 10 citizens, good. If there's 10 citizens and 10 undocumented, if 5 citizens commit crime and 2 undocumented do, even though undocumented crime rate is less, overall crime would be less without those undocumented here. It would be less if those citizens weren't here. I get what you're saying. Like, if somebody is not here, is here illegally, and they're doing crimes, then they're still doing crimes that wouldn't be committed but they're also doing positive things, right? And using crime as a argument against undocumented people is there's something called a generalization fallacy, and it kind of generalizes, oh, undocumented people commit crimes, therefore we shouldn't have crimes. Well, why not identify undocumented people that don't commit crimes? And again, it's not even necessarily about whether or not undocumented people commit crimes or not, because people that commit crimes shouldn't be committing crimes, and it's still illegal. Well, the citizens have a birthright to be here per the Constitution. Don't tell Donald Trump that. It's what happens is you start going into from undocumented to people who aren't just immigrants. Like a lot of the times, a lot of the things are, people that have TPS or people that are here on asylum, or or the Afghanistan, the guy that shot the 2 military soldiers, the 2 National Guards people. People conflate crimes by people that are here illegally with people that are here legally, and they're still immigrants. And that's where you start getting into a lot of the confusion and stuff. And then you also get into what about people, undocumented people who save lives? I have a friend that at the time his status was not legal. He has now got legal status, but at one point he had a neighbor that their house caught on fire, and he didn't want to call the fire department because, if he didn't want to, he was worried about calling the fire department because he didn't want to get deported. So he ran into the house, saved her life and her dog's life. And then they called the fire department, and he went home and he kind of, hid. But like that's a life that an undocumented immigrant saved. So what about the jobs that they save? What about the impact they have on the economy? It's just sort of, if we didn't have this bad person there, then that bad thing wouldn't have happened. But also, what about if we didn't have this good person here, that good thing wouldn't have happened? It's just a generalization fallacy that tends to cover up the larger conversation about whether or not immigrants have a net positive or impact on the conversation. Even undocumented people are net positive to our economy and our culture, unless you are a white supremacist. Kind of like generalizing MAGA as a racist. Okay, but generalizing MAGA as a racist is not really the same thing, because MAGA is an ideology that people embrace. Calling Nazis, I'm not saying MAGA are Nazis. I'm saying if you call Nazis racist, they're kind of like embracing a racist ideology. So it's fair to call a Nazi racist. When you talk about the MAGA, like the America First MAGA movement, where you've got Donald Trump signs an executive order like banning citizenship new citizenship from people that have cleared it and everything from like 28 different countries or 38 different countries, I forget, or 18. I can't remember how many countries it was. Every single one of them was majority person of color. When you're talking about him banning people from immigration, and it's almost all people of color. Then the one country in Africa where people can come over and declare asylum is South Africa, and it's white people from South Africa. When you've got a policy to go out and clear any reference to DEI, which is not racist, like you're not even allowed to say DEI. You've got him doing things like the Tuskegee Airmen and getting rid of that. He won't acknowledge Martin Luther King Day. Like there's a certain point where the movement just has a lot of racist stuff about it. And so if somebody embraces that racist movement, then it's kind of hard to see the difference between a MAGA and a racist. Okay, so say for I think that people who commit crimes, like violent crimes, should be prosecuted for those crimes. I don't think that people who didn't commit violent crimes should bear the blame for those who do. So like, for instance, or even other crimes, like, so there's these Somali guys that, by the way, the Somalis who committed fraud were all American citizens. Most of them, I think, were even born here. But taking all Somali immigrants and smearing them with the fraud that certain Somalis committed, and you can say, well, if those Somalis weren't here, then that fraud wouldn't have happened. And that's true. But that doesn't mean that all the Somalis that are here are responsible for this, for the wrong thing that those Somalis did. I think that what you have to be careful of is not blaming people who didn't do anything for things that other people did simply because they have a same origin. It's not far off the mark. What makes it statistically insignificant? I assume you're talking about people that save lives and people that actually help. What makes that? How do you know that's statistically insignificant? Why is it more statistically insignificant than undocumented migrants that kill people? How do you know that, there aren't at least as many or more that have helped save people or fed people or clothed people or done good things or kind things for people? What makes that statistically insignificant? How do you know how many haven't saved lives? I don't think that. What about why is it that you have to paint all undocumented immigrants with the actions of the ones that did bad things? I think the ones who did bad things should be prosecuted. I don't think that the ones who did bad things, who didn't do bad things, should be smeared by the ones who did. Black Republican of over 40 years. I want nothing to do with MAGA. Yes. The ones who commit crimes should be deported. No, I absolutely, I never said anything remotely like they shouldn't be deported. In fact, I would ask you, if this is what, do you think they should be deported? Do you think that that should be the priority? Because right now there are 1.5 million people walking around on the streets of the United States of America that have been convicted of felonies, that are walking around on the streets, that are illegal immigrants, that have orders to be deported. What happens is they finish their prison sentence And then it's time to send them out. And the states can't do this. The local counties can't do it. Whatever, jail or prison they're in doesn't have the authority to deport them. So they report them to ICE. And then ICE is supposed to come and pick them up and deport them. But then ICE doesn't show up. And because they've already served their sentence, that local prison has to release them. Why isn't ICE focused on getting these 1.5 million instead of going after the ones that didn't commit crimes beyond crossing the border illegally? Yeah, even many well-meaning people, the guy who wrote Out to Be an Anti-Fascist, can't think of his name, or an anti-racist, Ibram Kendi. If you read How to Be an Anti-Racist, he said the first racist he had to talk to was himself. Like, he had to learn to reject the racist thoughts and ideas that came in his own head. And so the first thing to being an anti-racist is recognizing the things you in our culture, just is being raised in our culture, implants thoughts and ideas in your head that are subconsciously racist, and you do things based on that. And a lot of fighting racism is not fighting with racists. It's rejecting racist inclinations you have without realizing it. And so you have to consciously first say, no, I reject that thought. I do not accept that thought. I refuse to accept that thought. The first way to become an anti-racist is reject the racist thoughts and inclinations you have in yourself, just by virtue of the fact that you've been raised in America and have these inclinations without even being conscious of it. That's fair. I don't know. I think that the idea of America first, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think, human first, like, just, why can't we just be for humanity? Why do we have to be for America over somebody else? If something can benefit us and Canada and Mexico and Europe, why not just benefit everybody? Why does it have to benefit America more than anybody else? We have to go far beyond. We have gone far beyond going after the worst of the worst now. We're going after everybody but the worst of the worst. In Minnesota, only 8.5% of the people they've arrested are those convicted felons who are walking around. There's different numbers that are bandied about people who are arrested or whatever. But the actual worst of the worst, the violent felons, the ones who have been convicted of violent felonies, are only a very tiny percentage of the people who are being arrested. I voted for well, Donald Trump is definitely not a Christian. They claim local law enforcement. No, this is a different thing between local law enforcement. The local law enforcement is not obligated to help ICE detain people that are here because they're undocumented workers or whatever. And this is a problem that goes way beyond even the idea of sanctuary states or sanctuary cities. There's people that have been here for 30 years that are on this list. It's not just a new thing. But nations don't necessarily compete. Nations exist. And they just exist for what's best for them. It's not everybody thinks that what's best for me means what's worse for you. Like, sometimes we can both excel at something at the same time. Why can't we have like a symbiotic relationship with the rest of the world? What's America First about? Right. That's a what now you're reading into my no, I'm not reading into your comment. I'm reading into the whole notion of America first or anything first. Like I just think that not everything needs to be a competition. And sometimes everybody can benefit at the same time. There doesn't have to be a big fish eating a little fish. So, anyway, that's because he's a dope. He's also just, I assume you mean about being a Christian. He's also just, are you a Christian? I assume you are, based on what you said. But, like if you read Galatians 5 and it talks about the fruit of the flesh and the fruit of the spirit. I went through one time, I'm a Christian, by the way, and I spent 15 years as a minister. I went through and I looked at all the fruits of the flesh, and there was one where it was he's not given, like he's not an alcoholic, but there's a lot of evidence that he's got other drug addictions like Adderall, and there's no evidence that he's into witchcraft, but all the other fruits of the flesh he exhibits, like outbursts of anger and all that kind of stuff. And I just find it funny that the only one where you really can't, at least to some degree, hang on him is witchcraft, since he's always talking about witch hunts and everything. So the one thing he's not is a witch. So I guess technically he doesn't have to worry about witch hunts. Not about a first. You're reading into my comment about ICE and about look. Yeah. Okay. So the thing about what I was talking about with ICE and the worst of the worst and everything, that has nothing to do with local law enforcement. That's like the prison. The prison notifies ICE, and then ICE is supposed to show up to the prison, and then they're supposed to turn the person over to ICE before they're ever released from prison. Sanctuary cities are municipalities that need and want all their immigrants, no matter their status. They want to grow. ICE is destroying what people love about living in a city. ICE should go to areas consistently, vote for Trump's agenda, but this isn't about immigration, and we know it. It's not. And you can tell this, because even though brown people make up about 60 to 70% of illegal immigrants, they make up 98% of the people that are being apprehended by ICE. They're not grabbing up the white illegal immigrants that are overstaying on visas. Is he really a Republican? It's funny that he's a rhino as far as I'm concerned. He just took over the Republican Party. You know who else took over a party is Adolf Hitler. That's why he's not a socialist. Sorry, Rodney. I appreciate you. Thanks for talking. I did appreciate being able to have a conversation with somebody I didn't agree with, but wasn't trolling me or being a dick. So thanks for that. So anyway, I think that's good enough for today. We're coming up on 4 hours. I'll be back tomorrow, and then I'll be off for the weekend. So anyway, have a good evening, everybody. I'll talk to you later.